Chapter 181. Tom's expression turned cold when he heard this. Qin Hui, who usually spoke to them with his head down, was so bold today. Could it be that this guy had already betrayed them? Qin Hui, have you grown wings? You dare to talk to Mr. Tom like this? A man from Long was standing next to Tom, was the first to rebuke Qin Hui. Qin Hui sneered and was about to speak when he saw Ling Feng raise his hand to shut him up. Ling Feng stretched out a finger and gently hooked it at the door of the shelter. The 5-meter-high door instantly broke away from the entire shelter and floated in the air. Ling Feng lightly tapped his finger, and the door fell steadily on the snow. Tom in the shelter was directly stunned by Ling Feng's operation. You know, this door weighs 10 tons, and even the strongest person in their shelter can't move it at all. This young man can move the door with just a light touch. This is also terrifying. The other members of the escort team were even more stunned. Get ready. The enemy is about to attack. Prepare to counterattack. Tom immediately gave orders to his men and reported the matter to the shelter's top management. Ling Feng walked towards the shelter with confidence. The soldiers in the shelter took out various weapons and fired at Ling Feng. In an instant, various types of bullets flew towards Ling Feng. Ling Feng disdained these bullets. With his current defense, these bullets could not hurt him at all. He waved his hands casually, and all the bullets flew backwards along the original route. All the guards of the shelter were shot and killed. Tom, who was reporting the battle situation through the intercom, was stunned in place, and the voice on the other end of the intercom was still urging him. Tom, I'm asking you a question. What is the strength of the opponent? Fuck. Talk. Tom swallowed his saliva and was about to speak. A person appeared beside him without any sign and took the intercom from his hand. Tom looked at the man in front of him with trembling body. No, he was not a human, but a devil. Otherwise, how could he know magic? Ling Feng said in a relaxed tone while holding the intercom. I am Ling Feng. If you want to know my strength, you will know it soon. Ling Feng threw away the intercom and killed the foreigner in front of him. Half a minute later, Qin Hui ran to Ling Feng breathlessly. Ling Feng had just teleported over more than 300 meters away. He, an ordinary person, could only run to catch up. Seeing the strength shown by Ling Feng, he was even more glad that he made the right decision to surrender. Lead the way, Ling Feng said coldly. Yes. Qin Hui did not dare to delay and took Ling Feng to the inside of the shelter. The two passed through 3 gates in succession. Ling Feng cleared all the guards on the way. He did not intend to let anyone out alive today. When Ling Feng, led by Qin Hui, arrived at the core of the shelter, a fully armed team was already waiting for him. Ling Feng took a glance and saw that there were about 100 people here. All of them were foreigners, and everyone had a purple potato face, which showed that they had taken too many drugs. These people were generally over 2 meters tall and strong, and their tight combat uniforms outlined their perfect curves. If they were placed before the end of the world, they would have been supermodels. In the middle of the team stood a man wearing a blue tight combat uniform. He had blonde hair and blue eyes, a firm look in his eyes, and a shield in his hand that he couldn't tell the material. He looked very imposing from a distance. I am Ross from MK Company and the person in charge of this shelter. Who are you and why are you attacking us? Ross looked at Ling Feng with a gloomy face and said. Ling Feng smiled coldly. Do I need a reason to beat you? This is our dragon country's territory. You foreign devils have illegally invaded our shelter. It is reasonable for me to beat you, Ross said disdainfully. Your territory? Our MK Company is a formal company. It is legal for us to be stationed in this shelter. This is our private territory. You have no right to enter. Really? Then it is also reasonable for you to massacre people in other shelters? Ling Feng asked back. Ross was speechless for a moment, and then he said angrily, I don't care who you are. Anyone who dares to kill people from our great country will pay a heavy price in the world. You can't leave this place today. Ling Feng looked at him coldly. I should say this to you. You will all die today. Except for you, I will build and destroy all the bases of your MK in Dragon Country. Ha ha ha, Dragon Country people who can only brag. I want to see today. Ross saw it before he finished his sentence. That a strange scene. The genetic warriors around him began to turn into a ball of blood mist one by one. Yes, blood mist, without even bones, and exploded on the spot. The explosions sounded one after another like firecrackers. After all the warriors standing in the front row exploded, the second row also began to explode. The whole team was in chaos. They had never seen such a scene before. How could people explode for no reason? He is a devil. He's a messenger from hell. The warriors standing in the back row all wanted to escape in fear, but soon they found that they could not move their bodies. No matter how hard they tried, they could not even lift their arms. Ross's face finally began to panic at this time, because he found that he could not move either. You know, his strength can defeat the king-level superpowers, and the so-called snow god of the white god cult has to be polite to him. You. Who are you? What kind of witchcraft did you use on us? Ling Feng smiled slightly and said nothing. Soon, only Ross was left on the field, and the rest of the people turned into blood mist. Qin Hui, who was standing behind Ling Feng, was shaking his calves. Ling Feng's methods were too shocking. He killed people from a distance. He was horrible. Qin Hui wiped the cold sweat with trembling hands. Ross said angrily, "You are sneaking up on me. If you have the guts, let's have a face-to-face duel." Ling Feng smiled slightly and released his control. "Then I'll give you this chance." Ross felt his whole body lighten, and the restraints on his body disappeared. He moved his body, and the joints of his body creaked. "Let you feel the power of our MK Company's super serum." Ross grinned and rushed towards Ling Feng quickly. The huge force made footprints on the hard floor, and Ross's figure came in front of Ling Feng in a breath. Ross clenched his fists, gathered all his strength, and punched Ling Feng in the face with his fist as big as a sandbag. Ross was confident that his punch was enough to kill Ling Feng. He had killed a king-level supernatural with one punch before. Ling Feng's body was obviously not good at defense, and he would definitely not be able to block his punch. Chapter 182. The next second, Ling Feng grabbed his neck with one hand, and Ross was lifted up by Ling Feng with one hand. "You are too weak. You dare to confront me with this strength," Ling Feng said with a mocking look. Ross's face flushed red, and he couldn't speak. He wanted to resist, but his neck was pinched, and he had no strength in his body. Ling Feng was too lazy to talk nonsense with him. He broke his neck with his right hand and threw the body aside casually like throwing garbage. "Where's the laboratory?" Ling Feng turned his head and looked at Qin Hui, who was trembling. Inside. I'll take you there." Qin Hui walked towards the inside of the shelter with Ling Feng with a pale face. As Ling Feng walked, he cleaned up the remnants of MK Company, leaving corpses all over the floor. The two soon arrived at the laboratory. This laboratory is very large, covering thousands of square meters, with hundreds of people busy inside without any crowding. Ling Feng looked at the experimental scene inside, and his expression suddenly turned cold. He saw that there were several people tied up on the experimental tables, one of whom was a child, and there were various human organs soaked in glass bottles in the laboratory. On one of the experimental tables, a researcher in a white coat was holding a syringe with a red liquid in his hand and was about to inject a woman on the table. The woman was terrified and kept begging, "No, please, no, you can ask me to do anything, but no." The white coat had cold eyes. When he looked at the woman's plea did not make him have any emotional fluctuations. He took the syringe and prepared to stab the woman's arm. The woman looked at the man in front of her with despair. She knew that once she was injected, she would die. The girls who were locked in the same cell with her, as long as they were taken away, none of them could go back alive. She was already the last person in that cell. Just when he was about to close his eyes and give up struggling, the man in front of him suddenly stopped in place, as if he had been put under a spell. Ling Feng smashed the glass door of the laboratory with one punch and walked in. All the researchers in the laboratory were horrified to find that they could not move at all, and then they saw a strange man walking into the laboratory. "Go and put them down from the laboratory table," Ling Feng ordered Qin Hui. After Qin Hui responded, He quickly walked to the laboratory table to untie the shackles on everyone. After being rescued, these people still stood there in panic, not daring to move. Besides you, are there any other people locked up? Ling Feng said to a woman who had just been rescued. Yes, they're all in the cell. The woman looked at Ling Feng in fear and said tremblingly. Ling Feng glanced at Qin Hui, and Qin Hui immediately understood what Ling Feng meant. I'll bring them here. Qin Hui immediately trotted out of the laboratory after he finished speaking. Soon, more than 40 people were brought to Ling Feng, including men, women, young and old. Ling Feng looked at these people, all of whom were skinny and bony, with fear on their faces, and dared not look at Ling Feng. Ling Feng looked at this group of ordinary people with a calm expression and said, I am the leader of the God of War base. I have killed all the guards outside. Now I give you a chance to take revenge. Kill all the foreigners in this laboratory. After Ling Feng finished speaking, there was a burst of discussion in the crowd, but no one took action. All of them lowered their heads and were willing to be an ostrich. Ling Feng frowned slightly and said in a cold voice, If you don't take action, then I will untie their restraints and see if the other party will show mercy to you. Many people in the crowd changed their faces drastically. They knew what would happen if they faced this group of people. I'll do it. A young man walked out of the crowd. The man walked to an operating table, touched a scalpel, and walked to a white coat. The white coat looked at the fierce young man with horror in his eyes. The young man laughed grimly and directly inserted the sharp scalpel into the heart of the white coat. Blood immediately flowed from the white coat's chest, and he died soon after. The young man's eyes were full of bloodthirsty pleasure, and he turned his head and shouted to the crowd here, Brothers, come and avenge your family. After that, he continued to take the scalpel to harvest the lives of these foreigners. Fight them. A few more people rushed towards this group of people, and finally everyone joined the massacre. They were freed from the fear at the beginning, and finally gradually went crazy. They have some used knives, some used scissors, and those without weapons bit directly with their mouths. They used the weapons in their hands to cruelly torture these white coats, wantonly releasing their inner hatred. The whole laboratory seemed to have turned into a slaughterhouse, and the original butchers became lambs. Seeing this scene, Ling Feng felt that there should be no MK people who could walk out alive. Ling Feng came to the cold storage room of the laboratory, hoping to find some genetic raw materials. Ling Feng kicked open the door of the cold storage room, walked into the cold storage room, and saw more than a dozen cabinets more than one person high, filled with various genetic serums with strange effects. Ling Feng put them all into the space and took them back for Lin Su to study and see if they could be improved. In addition, there are some first-generation viruses, which are highly contagious. These foreigners really have bad intentions. Ling Feng put these viruses into the space, and if he has the opportunity to go to the United States, he must let them suffer the consequences. Ling Feng searched for half a day and finally found the genetic materials in the last few cabinets, but the quantity was not large, only a dozen copies. Fortunately, there is a system. Otherwise, this amount would not be enough. After collecting the genetic materials, there was nothing valuable in the entire cold storage room, and Ling Feng directly used the strange fire to burn everything in it to ashes. Ling Feng returned to the laboratory. At this time, the laboratory had become a purgatory on Earth, with the remains of those white coats everywhere, and no complete corpse. Some people even ate a corpse directly, which made Ling Feng frown slightly. But he did not stop them. These guys killed so many people, and it would not be too much to let them die 10,000 times. Ling Feng took Qin Hui out of the laboratory and found the warehouse of the shelter. He left a small part of the food in it for the survivors and put the rest into the space. The food storage here is quite rich, with all kinds of chicken, fish, meat, eggs, snacks, and drinks, enough for a base to eat for several years. When we walked out of the shelter, the Black Panther was lying at the door of the shelter, waiting impatiently. Ling Feng jumped onto the Black Panther's back. Go home. Chapter 183. After Ling Feng returned to the Ares base, he took Qin Hui back to the confinement room. Qin Hui said apprehensively, Chief, you see my joining the Ares base. Ling Feng said with a look of sudden realization, a little embarrassed. You're talking about this? Qin Hui smiled and bent over and said, Chief, I really want to join the big family of our Ares base. I have developed a deep affection for this place now. I thought I had no choice but to be a traitor before, but now I want to be a good person. Qin Hui looked at Ling Feng with hope after he finished speaking. Ling Feng patted his shoulder with some regret and said, You performed very well today, but the base has a rule that your probation period has not yet expired. Wait a little longer. Qin Hui had no choice but to smile awkwardly. Ling Feng led him to the door of a confinement room, and it was William from MK Company who was captured with him before. Ling Feng signaled the guard to open the door. William looked at Qin Hui with a vicious look, but he didn't dare to have any dissatisfaction with Ling Feng. Qin Hui, the detention room is too tense recently, so you should stay with your former colleague for a few days, Ling Feng said calmly. Qin Hui's face changed immediately after hearing this, and he said to Ling Feng in a horrified tone, Chief, don't do that. If I'm locked up with this guy, he will kill me. Qin Hui could imagine what would happen if he was locked up with William. Not to mention this guy's hatred for him, and his previous provocation against him. Even this guy's special hobby could torture him to death. Nonsense, you are all colleagues. How could he kill you? Don't you think so, William? Ling Feng looked at William. William nodded with a smile on his face. Okay, stop talking nonsense. You can come out after the probation period. After saying that, Ling Feng pushed Qin Hui into the detention room and closed the door. Chief, please let me change rooms. Qin Hui begged with tears in his eyes while lying at the door. Ling Feng walked away without looking back as if he didn't hear him. A traitor wants to join the God of War base and treats me as a garbage dump. Ling Feng sneered in his heart. William looked at Qin Hui with an evil smile, and his eyes gradually became abnormal. Mr. William, let's talk it out. Qin Hui looked at William with a dry smile. Hey, Mr. William, put on your pants quickly. What are you doing in broad daylight? It's not a good influence. Don't touch me, hey, help. Ling Feng hummed a little song and walked back to the villa leisurely. Now that the raw materials for making genetic serum have been obtained, he can start the research work of Soldier King No. 3. However, before the development, another important thing needs to be done, that is, to improve strength. Ling Feng's current strength has reached 9,000 points. Another 1,000 points will break through 10,000 times. 10,000 times is a turning point. If it reaches 10,000 times, his body will definitely undergo another transformation. His strength will also reach a new level. Ling Feng took out dozens of inner pills from the space, all of which were ordinary superpowers. After killing several waves of enemies before, Ling Feng now has more than 200 inner pills in his hand. Ling Feng took a handful and threw it into his mouth, then lay on the ground and slowly digested the energy inside. In just a few minutes, the inner pill that had just been eaten was digested, but it did not break through 10,000 points. Now it should be around 9,500 points, and there is still 500 points left. Ling Feng grabbed another handful of inner pills and threw them into his mouth. Close your eyes and digest slowly. 5 minutes later, Ling Feng suddenly opened his eyes. Damn, it's getting stronger. A sharp pain began to sweep through his whole body. It was different from the last time. Last time, he felt his bones being slowly broken, but this time, it was in the internal organs. The heart, liver, spleen, lungs, and kidneys began to ache at the same time. Ling Feng felt that his internal organs were rapidly expanding and about to burst, and then began to shrink rapidly, with the illusion of being crushed. In this expansion and contraction, his body size also grew and shrank. Except for the internal organs, the blood circulation speed began to increase, as if it was accelerated, and his heart rate soared to more than 1,000 beats per minute. Ling Feng's clothes were directly blown up because of the change in his body size. He lay naked on the ground, his whole body was red, and he was constantly steaming. The temperature of the whole room began to rise rapidly. However, Ling Feng had no idea about this. He was in extreme pain. The transformation of his internal organs made him faint from the pain. The whole process lasted about half an hour. The pain gradually disappeared, and the strength of the body gradually recovered. 10 minutes later, Ling Feng sat up from the ground. Looking at the black sticky stuff all over his body, Ling Feng didn't have time to feel the changes in his body, so he went to the bathroom to take a hot bath. Half an hour later, Ling Feng changed into a comfortable pajamas and walked out of the bathroom refreshed. Ling Feng felt the changes in his body and felt that he seemed to have endless strength in his body. Through introspection, he found that there was a layer of golden film looming between his 5 internal organs. His skin became whiter and smoother to the touch, comparable to the touch of a baby's skin. Although it felt very soft to the touch, it was very tough. Ling Feng was confident that his current defense could rub a nuclear bomb with his hands. The second was that his various energy factors doubled, and the gravity field reached 6,000 times. Once the field was opened, even a powerful emperor would turn into mud. The teleportation distance exceeded 5,000 meters, and the range of use of the source of all poisons reached 5,000 meters, which was terrifying. Secondly, the brain development reached 99%, but it could not break through to 100%. Ling Feng had no way to deal with this. Perhaps the effect of the inner elixir could not allow the brain to continue to develop. Finally, there was the change in the blood. The golden blood accounted for about 80% of the whole blood. Ling Feng predicted that the blood in the body would turn into gold in the next transformation. Ling Feng teleported directly to a snowy ground 5,000 meters away from the base. Now his strength has reached about 10,500 times, and he doesn't know what level he is now. After all, he is not a superpower and cannot evaluate himself by the standard of superpowers. Anyway, Zheng Sanhe, who is at the peak of the Emperor level, is no different from an ordinary person in his hands and can be easily destroyed. So far, he has not encountered an enemy who can fight with him at full strength, and he also longs to have a good fight with an evenly matched enemy. But reality is so cruel. Being invincible is so lonely. Chapter 184. After Ling Feng sighed for a while, he returned to the genetic laboratory in the villa. Now that his strength has improved, he can start to study the Soldier King No. 3 serum. As for the Liu family and the Kai family, he plans to solve them in a few days when he has time. Anyway, he already has the genetic raw materials, so he is not so anxious. Just when Ling Feng was seriously developing the serum, a major event that could change the direction of the white, closed divine religion was happening. Hu Tianxi was ready to rebel. In a hidden secret room, a long conference table was full of people. Hu Tianxi sat on the main seat with a serious face. On the seats on both sides of him were all his confidants who had won over during this period of time. They were all people who were deeply persecuted by the Snow God, and everyone had an irreconcilable hatred with the Snow God. Among them were the Dharma protectors and heavenly kings, senior managers of the divine religion. Hu Tianxi used his personal charm to successfully pull them into his camp. Everyone, tomorrow is a great time for us to act. Success or failure will come at this cost. As long as you succeed, you will be the future masters of the divine religion and will not be oppressed by that person anymore. Hu Tianxi said solemnly, I have long been fed up with the Snow God. This time, with the deputy envoy leading us in the uprising, we will surely succeed. A middle-aged man with a full beard said excitedly. Yes, if it weren't for the deputy envoy bringing us together, I'm afraid I would still be a group of scattered sand, oppressed by the Snow God. One of them also echoed. Hu Tianxi listened to the compliments of others calmly, without too much fluctuation in his heart. All the compliments were false, and any compliments were meaningless before things were successful. Let's talk about some details of tomorrow's action. Ling Feng interrupted these people's flattery and continued. Tomorrow, we will do this. The meeting lasted until late at night. After Hu Tianxi confirmed that the whole plan was foolproof, he announced the end of the meeting. Hu Tianxi tossed and turned in his bed. Tomorrow is the time to decide his fate. If he succeeds, he will be successful and famous. If he fails, he will die. Tomorrow must be successful, Zihan, wait for me. Early the next morning, Hu Tianxi put on a brand new white robe and a mask, ready to attend the daily morning meeting of the divine religion. As usual, Hu Tianxi stood to the right of the Snow God's seat, and Yang Zihan stood on the left. The two looked at each other briefly in the air. Yang Zihan instantly understood the meaning of Hu Tianxi's eyes. The high-level members of the divine religion arrived at the venue one after another, and everyone stood quietly waiting for the arrival of the snow god. 10 minutes later, the snow god, wearing a white robe and a golden mask, walked in from the gate of the venue, slowly walked to the seat on the high platform, and sat down. Everyone in the venue knelt down to worship the snow god, and then began to praise the snow god. Dear snow god, thank you for leading us into a new day. On this beautiful day, please guide us deeper into your existence. The snow god is immortal and will always be in my heart. After saying some praise, the snow god waved his hand, and the people in the audience stopped talking immediately. Everyone present had already been familiar with this set of daily procedures. Let's get started. Each organization report your work. The majestic voice of the snow god came from the high platform. Then the various kings and guardians began to report their work in turn, and an hour passed quickly. All the people present had basically reported, and a few of them who did not complete their work well were directly taken away by the law enforcement team. Does anyone else have anything to report? Let's end today's morning meeting. Your Majesty the Snow God, I have something important to report. Hu Tianxi knelt down facing the snow god and said loudly, "Oh, what's the matter with the deputy envoy?" The snow god asked curiously. After all, Hu Tianxi, the deputy envoy, basically didn't talk at ordinary times, but today he took the initiative to report. Your Majesty, when I was out on patrol recently, I found a strange tree in a base below us. The fruit on it can greatly increase people's strength, and the tea made from its leaves has the function of calming the nerves and helping sleep. I would like to invite Your Majesty to go and taste it together. The snow god was delighted when he heard this. There is such a fruit tree. Is the effect really as you said? Hu Tianxi knelt on the ground and said with a pious face, I dare not deceive Your Majesty, but this fruit is very magical. Once picked, it must be eaten within 10 minutes. Otherwise, the strange fruit will rot and deteriorate immediately after 10 minutes. So I dare to invite you to go there in person. The snow god thought for a moment and said happily, In that case, I will go with you. I hope you don't lie to me. I dare not. Let's go. The saint girl will go with us. After saying this, the snow god stood up from his seat, walked to Hu Tianxi, and stretched out his hand to help Hu Tianxi up. Hu Tianxi lowered his head and followed the snow god and walked out with Yang Zihan. The snow god got on his exclusive snowmobile, accompanied by Yang Zihan, and the others walked on both sides of the snowmobile. Due to the last attack on the God of War base, Gu Qing took away all the transportation tools of the god cult. The snow god's all-terrain snowmobile was the only transportation tool of the god cult. Hu Tianxi stood on the side of the snowmobile, and he heard the faint movement sounds inside along the way. The moans were like a knife stabbing into his chest. Hu Tianxi's face was iron Qing. He clenched his fists tightly, wishing he could rush in and tear the old man into pieces. This guy must have done it on purpose to embarrass himself by insulting his woman in front of him. Hu Tianxi walked for half an hour in agony, but he felt as if a century had passed. In this half hour, every minute and every second seemed like a year. Finally, they arrived at the destination. Yang Zihan got out of the car with messy hair, and her eyes were full of sorrow when she looked at Hu Tianxi. Hu Tianxi let out a long breath and sorted out his emotions. He walked to the door and said respectfully, Your Majesty the Snow God, we're here. Well, the lazy voice of the snow god came from the car. Hu Tianxi took the initiative to step forward and open the door. The snow god sat in the car and tidied her clothes. She also tightened her belt deliberately, as if she was doing it for Hu Tianxi to see. The snow god got out of the car and patted Hu Tianxi on the shoulder. The saint's ability is very good. There was an unknown smile in her eyes, as if she was mocking. Hu Tianxi froze, feeling extremely humiliated in his heart, but he concealed all this perfectly. Looking at the back of the snow god, his eyes were filled with strong murderous intent. Chapter 185. Hu Tianxi suppressed his anger and brought the snow god to the interior of the icefield shelter. The snow god sat on the main seat in the reception room. The head of the shelter and other senior executives knelt on both sides of him, carefully waiting. I heard that your shelter recently discovered strange fruits. Is this true? The snow god looked at the leader of the shelter below. Report to the snow god. It is true. I dare not keep it privately, so I specially reported it to the deputy envoy. The head of the Icefield shelter said with a terrified face. Well, yes, your loyalty to this god is seen by this god. The snow god looked at him with appreciation and said again, I remember your name is Hu Tianyi, right? My name is indeed Hu Tianyi. I am honored that you, the snow god, can still remember me even though you are busy every day. Hu Tianyi stood on the side of the snow god and saw that the time was almost right. So he spoke immediately. Master Hu, since the snow god has come, go and get the exotic fruit. I will go and get the exotic fruit now. Please wait for a moment, snow god. Hu Tianyi stood up and prepared to go out. Wait a moment. Hu Tianyi immediately called Hu Tianyi, who was about to leave. What else do you want? Deputy Envoy. The tea made from the leaves of the exotic fruit you mentioned tastes better than those top-grade teas. Why don't you prepare it for the snow god to taste? Hu Tianyi looked at Hu Tianyi meaningfully. Hu Tianyi showed a look of realization and patted his head in a hurry. Oh, please forgive me. I will prepare it now. Hu Tianyi walked out in a hurry after saying that. The scene was instantly quiet. Only the sound of the snow god tapping the chair with his fingers was left. After a long while, the snow god suddenly spoke. Deputy Envoy, what do you think of me? The snow god looked at Hu Tianyi, and the meaning of his words seemed to be meaningful. Hu Tianyi's body stiffened, and he immediately knelt down in front of the snow god, saying in a pious tone, The snow god is my reborn parent. You took me in, trained me, and made me a deputy envoy. I will never be able to repay your kindness to me. In this case, you won't betray me. The snow god suddenly raised his voice, and at the same time, a sense of majesty suddenly burst out from his body, making everyone in the room feel extremely oppressed. Hu Tianyi was the closest, and his forehead was also stained with fine sweat. I dare not. If I betray you, I am willing to die. Hu Tianyi knelt on the ground and gritted his teeth. The snow god was silent for a few seconds, and then laughed. Ah, good. You are worthy of being the person I like. The snow god walked to Hu Tianyi and helped him up. I was just joking with you. Don't take it seriously. Hu Tianyi secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he had just held back and didn't do anything, otherwise he would have really made things worse. I dare not. Hu Tianyi lowered his head and stood aside. After this little episode, the atmosphere on the scene became more depressing. Everyone dared not breathe, for fear of being noticed by the snow god. 10 minutes later, Hu Tianyi walked in carefully with the tea set. He brought the tea set to the high platform, and Hu Tianyi walked forward to take the tea set from Hu Tianyi's hand. Hu Tianyi put the tea set on the table beside him, poured a cup of tea, and then brought it to the front of the snow god, bending down and saying, Your Majesty the snow god, this is the tea made from the leaves of the strange tree. Please taste it. The snow god glanced at the tea in the cup. Take a cup and try it first, and tell me how it feels. Hu Tianyi said with some embarrassment. This tea is extremely precious. It would be a great rebellion for me to drink it first. The snow god smiled and said nonchalantly, It's okay. This god lets you drink it. No one dares to say anything. Hu Tianyi took a look at the tea and drank it all. Good tea. This tea has a strong taste without any bitterness. It has a sweet and refreshing aftertaste. It is really a top-notch tea. The snow god was immediately interested and said immediately, Pour me a cup and try it. Hu Tianyi immediately changed a cup and poured another cup of tea and handed it to the snow god respectfully. The snow god held the teacup, put it to the tip of his nose and smelled it, then drank it all, closed his eyes and tasted it slowly. Although he had only drunk tea a few times in his life, this tea was indeed more comfortable to drink. Well, good tea. The snow god nodded. The snow god, the exotic fruit has been picked. Hu Tianyi walked in with a tray in both hands. On the tray was a tangerine size. The red fruit was red all over and looked attractive. The moment the snow god saw the exotic fruit, his eyes lit up. As a king-level supernatural being, he could clearly feel the energy fluctuations on the exotic fruit. Show it up. Hu Tianxi quickly stepped forward to take the tray and brought it to the snow god. The snow god took the exotic fruit and looked at it carefully. It's really magical. Such a small fruit actually contains such magical energy. The snow god looked at the exotic fruit for a few more times and then handed the exotic fruit to Hu Tianxi. You ate it. Hu Tianxi's expression changed, and he said immediately, Snow god, there is only one exotic fruit left. You gave it to me. What do you do with yourself? The snow god glanced at Hu Tianxi coldly, with an unquestionable tone. Didn't you hear me asking you to eat it? A trace of panic flashed in Hu Tianxi's eyes, but he still took the exotic fruit. The snow god looked at him coldly and sneered in his heart. Hu Tianxi took a look at the strange fruit and ate it in one bite. A few seconds later, Hu Tianxi felt a powerful energy in his body slowly transforming his body, and his supernatural powers also increased rapidly at a terrifying speed. Hu Tianxi, this god treats you well? Why do you betray me? Do you think I don't know that this strange fruit is poisonous? The snow god looked at Hu Tianxi proudly, his eyes full of disdain. Hu Tianxi took off the mask on his face and threw it aside, and the resentment in his eyes was shown without any concealment. Treat me well? You occupy my woman and humiliate me in front of me. This is called treating me well. People like you who exploit the followers, say one thing on the surface and another behind the scenes, dare to call themselves gods, which is really an insult to the word God. Yang Zihan, who was standing aside, revealed anxiety in her eyes. She really didn't expect that Hu Tianxi actually ate the strange fruit. Although the strange fruit was full of energy, it also contained a deadly poison. The snow god looked at him coldly. No matter what, if you eat the strange fruit, you will definitely die. As for your woman, who said I will definitely die? Chapter 186. Hu Tianxi looked at the snow god with a mocking look on his face. The snow god sensed something wrong in Hu Tianxi's eyes, and he asked in doubt, What do you mean? Hu Tianxi laughed. This exotic fruit is indeed highly poisonous. You will die within an hour after eating it, but as long as you soak the leaves of the exotic tree in water and drink it, you can detoxify the poison and make the exotic fruit more effective. I have to thank you for this. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have been able to take this exotic fruit and break through the king level. Hu Tianxi looked at him with a smug look on his face after he finished speaking. This is the mysterious exotic tree of our dragon country. How can you, a Japanese, understand it? The snow god was shocked and looked at Hu Tianxi in shock. His identity is his biggest secret. No one in the entire divine religion knows how he knows his secret. If the members of the divine religion knew his true identity, his prestige in the divine religion would be greatly reduced, and the white-clothes divine religion that he had worked hard to build would be destroyed. Others in the audience also showed disbelief. How could the snow god be a Japanese? The grievances between Dragon Country and Japan have a long history and have always been at odds. If this is true, then they have been bowing and kowtowing to a Japanese, which is simply a great shame. The snow god looked at Hu Tianxi with a normal expression and said with a normal expression, It's simply nonsense. I am a pure Dragon Country person and have lived in Dragon Country for decades. How could I be a Japanese? Hu Tianxi slowly walked to the edge of the platform and looked at the snow god. I admit that you hid well, but the confidants you brought in were not as good as you. You can tell from their accents and looks that they are authentic Japanese. If you are not Japanese, why did you recruit so many Japanese to join this cult? If you are not Japanese, do you dare to take off your mask and let everyone see your true face? Hu Tianxi's series of questions made Xue Shun speechless. He did not expect that he would be discovered despite his caution. Xue Shun laughed angrily, looking at Hu Tianxi with resentment. I really didn't expect that I would be discovered by a young man like you after hiding for decades. I have to say that you are a talent. I really don't want to kill you. Kill me. Do you have the ability to do so? Before Hu Tianxi finished speaking, Dozens of superpowers rushed in from outside the door and stood behind him. These people are all high-ranking figures of the divine religion, and their strength is at the level of superpowers. They have all been absorbed into Hu Tianxi's camp. Snow God looked at the superpower who suddenly turned against him. Without any anger, but leisurely poured himself a cup of tea and tasted it slowly. Just relying on these few people, you want to seize power. And do you think they will really listen to you? Snow God glanced at the group of people behind Hu Tianxi. Why don't you take action quickly and take down this traitor? However, no one at the scene took action, and they still stood there looking at him. Didn't you hear what I said? Take down Hu Tianxi for me? Snow God increased the volume of his voice, with a hint of anger in his voice. Hu Tianxi looked at him coldly. Playing tricks? We dragons are the ancestors of you Japanese. I deliberately arranged those people who informed you. Do you really think you have everything under control? The Snow God clenched his fists. I didn't expect that after playing tricks for so long. I was fooled today. Okay. I really underestimated you. Hu Tianxi is really not as good as you. The Snow God stood up, and the powerful evil spirit on his body burst out instantly, and the solid wood chair behind him was directly blown away by the evil spirit. The king-level majesty instantly made the people in this space look terrified. With just these few people, it's far from enough to kill me. As soon as the Snow God's voice fell, a middle-aged man walked in from outside the door. The man had a rindan beard, and the momentum he exuded was the same as the Snow God, just like a king-level supernatural person. The middle-aged man stood at the door and said with a cold face, Muramasa, I told you that these dragon people are very cunning. You don't need to talk so much nonsense to them. Just kill all those who are unwilling to submit to my great Japanese country. The Snow God looked at the middle-aged man and said lightly, I just wanted to see how much effort they put into killing me. The result really surprised me. Huh? The middle-aged man also smiled coldly. In the face of absolute strength, no matter how profound the conspiracy is, it's useless. You Dragon Country trash, today is your death day. Who are you calling trash? The Japanese shorty. A loud voice came from outside the house. Then two figures, one tall and one short, with strong auras, quickly came over from a distance. The middle-aged man standing at the door changed his expression, because the two people who came over were actually king-level superpowers, and judging from the auras they exuded, they were no weaker than him. The middle-aged man looked at the two people defensively and said coldly, You two, this is an internal conflict in our God of War base. Don't meddle in other people's business. Get out of your uncle's internal conflict. You bunch of stinky bugs. Dare to come to our Dragon Country's trump card. Are you looking for death? The slightly shorter man was hot-tempered and directly retorted. It was also him who just called him a shorty. The Snow God standing on the high platform frowned slightly. The situation on the scene changed too quickly. Judging from the current strength on the field, he was at a disadvantage. He looked at the two king-level powerhouses who suddenly appeared and said coldly, I don't know what forces you two are from, but you insist on getting involved in this matter. The forces behind me are not something you can resist. The tall and thin man smiled disdainfully at the threat of the Snow God. No matter what forces you are, our Longping base will not refuse anyone. Longping base! The Snow God and the Japanese king-level strongman changed their expressions. Longping base is the largest base in several nearby provinces. It is said that there is official support behind it, and it is powerful. There are countless superpowers and many masters in the base. King-level superpowers can't even get a number in Longping base. The Japanese king-level strongman looked at the two strong men in Longping base and immediately wanted to retreat. He looked at the direction of the door and suddenly exerted force to quickly flee outside. If you want to leave, it's not that easy. The short strong man in Longping base sneered and immediately spread his body to chase after him. Hu Tianxi looked at another tall and thin king-level strongman and said respectfully, Brother Liu, leave this to me. Go and help Brother Wang kill that Japanese warrior. Don't let him get away. The tall and thin man looked at Hu Tianxi and reminded him, This guy is a king level. Are you sure you can handle him? Hu Tianxi smiled confidently. Don't worry, brother. I'm sure. I won't joke with my life. The tall and thin man nodded slightly, then turned around and ran quickly outside. As soon as the tall and thin man left, the snow god immediately looked happy. Chapter 187. The snow god did not expect that Hu Tianxi would be so arrogant. He, who had just broken through the king level, wanted to fight against himself, who was in the middle of the king level. Originally, he was still thinking about countermeasures and how to get out. Now Hu Tianxi took the initiative to propose it. It was really a ray of hope. Hu Tianxi, you are asking for death. Blame yourself for being too arrogant. The snow god looked at Hu Tianxi coldly. Not killing him was not enough to eliminate the anger in his heart. If he was not the snow god who was high above, the power he had worked so hard to build would be destroyed by this guy. When he thought of this, he was so angry that he trembled all over. Hu Tianxi raised his hand and looked at his watch and said in a flat tone, It's almost time. Then he looked at the snow god with a smile. Snow god, oh no, it should be Muramasa. Do you feel a dull pain in your heart now? Muramasa touched his chest and felt a tingling sensation. His face changed. What did you do to me? Hu Tianxi's mouth curled up slightly. Nothing. The tea you drank is also poisonous. The antidote is the exotic fruit. They are mutually reinforcing and mutually exclusive. If you eat the exotic fruit within half an hour after drinking the tea, the poison will be eliminated. Unfortunately, half an hour has passed. You! Muramasa pointed at Hu Tianxi with a face full of resentment. Even if I die, I will kill you first. Muramasa shouted angrily, and his figure instantly rushed towards Hu Tianxi, and the strength of a king-level strongman was displayed without reservation. Muramasa stretched out his hands, and hundreds of 1-meter-long ice spikes appeared in an instant. Each ice spike was extremely sharp, no less than metal. Die! Muramasa waved his hands, and hundreds of ice spikes instantly shot towards Hu Tianxi from all directions. Hu Tianxi narrowed his eyes slightly, and a trace of solemnity flashed in his eyes. He formed seals with his hands, and the whole field was instantly filled with howling winds. The sudden blizzard instantly blinded everyone's vision, and the originally fragile snowflakes turned into sharp weapons that made it impossible to open their eyes. Muramasa couldn't see Hu Tianxi's figure at all, and didn't know if he was hit by his attack. Just as he was observing carefully, he suddenly felt a chill on his back. His fighting instinct made him predict the opponent's attack. He directly formed an ice wall behind him, and then he dodged to the side. With a bang, the ice wall behind him instantly broke into pieces, and Hu Tianxi quickly stabbed his chest with a dagger in his hand. Muramasa's eyes changed instantly, and his pupils turned golden. Hu Tianxi met his eyes, and his whole body paused. His eyes were instantly sluggish, and he stood still. But soon Hu Tianxi woke up again. Although it was only half a second, it was enough for a king-level strongman. At the moment when Hu Tianxi woke up, Muramasa's ice spikes had already reached his chest. Hu Tianxi's face was horrified, and he immediately formed a line of ice and snow protection in front of him. But unfortunately, the timing was a little late, and the ice spikes were about to pierce his chest. Hu Tianxi felt unwilling in his heart. He had been planning for a long time. Was he going to die like this? But in the next moment, a miracle happened. The ice spikes stopped half a centimeter in front of him, and even Muramasa stopped in place. Hurry up! Yang Zihan said anxiously from a distance. Hu Tianxi was delighted, and the dagger in his hand pierced Muramasa's chest without hesitation, and then kicked him against the wall of the room, and the whole wall collapsed instantly because it could not bear the weight. Hu Tianxi looked at Yang Zihan with gratitude in his eyes. Yang Zihan's face was pale. Her strength was just that of an ordinary psychic. In order to use the time power to temporarily freeze Murakami, the king-level psychic, she overloaded her power. Yang Zihan smiled sweetly at Hu Tianxi. Ahem! Murakami struggled to stand up. He looked down and saw the blood on his chest, and felt the vitality that was constantly flowing away. He didn't understand why he suddenly became like this when he was about to kill Hu Tianxi, the bastard, but when he looked at Yang Zihan, he immediately understood. It's you did it! Murakami pointed at Yang Zihan with a look of surprise on his face. He couldn't believe that Yang Zihan would attack him. He had doubted anyone but this woman. The two had been entangled for such a long time, and they knew each other's depth very well. He always thought that Yang Zihan loved him, but now it seems that he was wrong. Murakami laughed at himself. He had lived for most of his life, but in the end, he fell into the hands of a woman. Hu Tianzi hugged Yang Zihan with a provocative look in his eyes. Murakami chuckled. I have tried all kinds of scenes and postures with her, and you will never experience this. Ha! Murakami slowly closed his eyes after speaking, and a generation of snow god fell. Hu Tianzi stared at the dead snow god for half a minute. He was not as excited and happy as he had imagined. Thinking back to what Muramasa said before his death, it was like a knife stabbing his heart hard, and he could not forget it for a long time. The snow god died, and he could successfully become the new leader of the white god cult, but what he lost would never come back. Yang Zihan held Hu Tianzi's hand and said in a weak tone, Tianzi, you succeeded. Seeing you become the new snow god, I also got what I wanted. I am no longer clean and unworthy of you. Let me go. Yang Zihan turned and left after speaking. Hu Tianzi felt a pain in his heart and quickly stepped forward to hug Yang Zihan, saying affectionately, Zihan, all I have done is for you. If you leave, then all I have done will be meaningless. Stay. I can't live without you. A trace of pride flashed across Yang Zihan's eyes, and then she said with a painful look, I am weak and can't help you at all. Hu Tianzi touched her hair lovingly and said softly, Don't worry, I will help you improve your strength. After Hu Tianzi finished speaking, he quickly walked to Murakami's body, took out a round crystal from his head, and handed it to Yang Zihan. This is the essence of a king-level superpower. After you absorb this, you can break through to the king level. In the future, you will no longer be a burden, but a powerful helper for me. Yang Zihan was moved, but did not take the crystal. Hu Tianzi directly grabbed her hand and forced it into her hand. Without you, I might have been killed by Murakami. This is what you deserve. Yang Zihan reluctantly accepted the crystal, but in fact she was ecstatic in her heart. I can become a king-level warrior. I'm no longer a fish that can be slaughtered at will. Those who offend me will all die. Chapter 188. Hu Tianzi killed Muramasa and successfully became the new leader of the white god cult. Sitting on the seat of the snow god before, Hu Tianzi was full of vigor and vitality. Yang Zihan, as the leader's wife, sat beside Hu Tianzi. From today on, the god cult will stop expanding, start to shrink its forces, and consolidate its existing territory. The first thing Hu Tianzi did after taking office was to change the previous strategy and switch from offense to defense. He knew that his enemy was Ling Feng, a powerful enemy that made people tremble. Although Ling Feng did not attack the god cult during this period, he knew very well that Ling Feng was a person who would never give up. The god cult failed to attack Ling Feng's base before, and Ling Feng would definitely retaliate, but the time of revenge was still unknown. Although he had tied himself to the thigh of Longping base, his strength was still not enough. If he did not have strong strength, he would gradually become a puppet of Longping base. The two king-level masters sent to him seemed to be there to assist him, but in fact they were also there to monitor him and gradually undermine him. So he had to accumulate strength to have more say in Longping base. Although everyone did not quite understand Hu Tianzi's order, they did not refute it. No one dared to touch the new leader. After all, he had just executed more than a dozen high-ranking officials in the church. The three kings were all dismissed, and the position of the king was cancelled, and two left and right deputy envoys were added. Then Hu Tianzi issued the second order. Tomorrow, the headquarters of the Divine Church will move to the Icefield base. All high-ranking officials will go there and set off on time tomorrow morning. Dismissed. After Hu Tianzi announced his order, he took Yang Zihan away directly. Tianzi, why do we have to change places? Yang Zihan asked with a puzzled look on his face. Hu Tianzi sighed helplessly. Ling Feng's god of war base will probably attack here soon. We should not have direct contact with him for now. Let's develop slowly first. I heard from 2 king-level masters in Longping Base that many exotic fruits in Genesis Mountain in Jiangnan Province have matured recently, and many superpowers will go there. I also want to try it. Maybe I will get a great opportunity. Yang Zihan nodded, and a gleam of light flashed in her eyes. I will accompany you. I am also a king-level superpower now. I will not be a burden to you. Okay, finally it's done. Ling Feng looked at the gene serum in his hand with joy. After 3 days of hard work, the King of Soldiers number 3 serum was finally developed. Compared with the first 2 generations, the 3rd generation serum is more effective. After using it, there will basically be no pain, allowing people to complete the transformation without knowing it. King of Soldiers number 3 serum directly raises the limit of the human body to 10,000 times, and comes with 3 superpowers, namely gravity field, teleportation, and strange fire. But this serum also has a flaw. That is, after the upgrade, Ling Feng himself cannot use it because this serum uses a lot of his own gene chains. However, Ling Feng didn't care much about it. His current upper limit is 100,000 times, and he has just broken through 10,000, and there is still a long way to go before 100,000. Ling Feng put the 10 serums he had just developed into the space for replication. In addition to this serum, Ling Feng also developed a new type of nutrient solution. The raw material of this nutrient solution is his own blood. He fused his blood with high molecular compounds to form this nutrient solution, which can not only make people absorb quickly, but also reduce the pain caused by the absorption process. Ling Feng is very satisfied with this nutrient solution. After all, as his strength gradually improves, the blood effect becomes stronger and stronger, and the effect of this nutrient solution will be better. After completing the research and development of the 2 products, Ling Feng walked out of the villa and stretched his waist. This is the first time he has walked out of the villa in the past 3 days. In the military square, Ma Wu was leading dozens of veterans to conduct strict training for the newly recruited soldiers. The new recruits all had painful expressions, and everyone looked a little tired. Ling Feng saw his shadow when he was in the army in their expressions. Ling Feng walked to the side of the training ground and watched the training of the new recruits. Ling Feng saw Dong Yinwu among the group of people. It was probably Wang Long who asked him to come and receive training with the new recruits. Ma Wu, who was supervising the training, saw Ling Feng and trotted to Ling Feng. Mr. Ling, I haven't seen you in the past few days. Ling Feng nodded. I'm currently researching the Soldier King number 3 serum. It just succeeded today. It's just right for you to gather all the veterans and use them together. By the way, how are the training of these new recruits going? Ma Wui shook his head slightly after hearing this. Although these are all elites selected from various bases, many of them were ordinary people before. Only a small number of them have served in the army, which is far less than our previous team members. We expect to admit 400 people, and there are 1,225 people here. 2/3 of them will be eliminated. Ling Feng nodded. We must form combat effectiveness as soon as possible, and we must work hard when we need to. Train to death. Ling Feng directly took out more than 1,000 Soldier King number 1 serums from the space, as well as some diluted nutrient solution, and put them on the ground. Old Ma, give these things to everyone first so that their strength can be improved, and then increase the intensity of training to complete the training work in the shortest time. In addition, we should also encourage these people appropriately. Tell them that this is only Soldier King number 1, and there are number 2 and number 3 waiting for them. It depends on whether they have this ability. Those who are eliminated can form a second-level team to be responsible for some peripheral work. Ma Wu took a notebook, nodded, and recorded Ling Feng's instructions. Okay, let's do this for now. After saying this, Ling Feng came to the command center of the shelter. Everyone in the shelter looked busy. Only Zheng Sanbao was sitting leisurely on the sofa drinking a little wine with a small plate of peanuts on the coffee table, eating with relish. Hey, old Zheng, you're living a comfortable life. Ling Feng walked to the side of Zheng Sanhe and said jokingly. When Zheng Sanbao saw Ling Feng coming, he stood up hurriedly and said a little embarrassedly, Chief, you see I don't have anything to do usually. I just drink a little wine to relieve boredom. Ling Feng asked him to sit down without any care. It's okay. Anyway, your work is simple. As long as it doesn't delay things, it's okay to drink a little wine. I came here today to ask you something. Wang Long also came over when he heard Ling Feng's voice and said lively, Fengzi, where have you been these days? I haven't seen you here. I'm doing some research. It's time to finish it today. You'll be in charge of issuing it later. Chapter 189. After Ling Feng finished speaking, he took out 600 Soldier King No. 3 serums and 600 nutrient solutions and placed them on Wang Long's desk. I won't tell you how to use it. You should know it. Give it to them as soon as possible. I'll give you some more for those high-level people. Wang Long touched the serums excitedly. Although it was not the first time he used it, he was excited every time when the soldiers' strength improved. In these expeditions, the soldiers he led were so powerful that he was in the limelight. He was intoxicated by the feeling of conquering the world. This time, the Soldier King No. 3 serum can increase the limit of the soldiers to 10,000 times. This nutrient solution can at least double their strength. Ling Feng said lightly. After listening to Ling Feng's description, Wang Long couldn't help but take a breath, even though he was mentally prepared. He originally thought that this time, the Soldier King No. 3 should be able to reach the limit of 2,000 times, which was already very good. Unexpectedly, Ling Feng directly reached 10,000. Also, this serum is too amazing. It doubles directly. That means at least 2,000 times the limit. Wow, it's incredible. 2,000 times is already more than the king-level superpowers. You know, the physical limit of the king-level superpowers is 1,500 times. This is equivalent to 600 king-level team members. A king-level powerhouse can build a large base. It's scary to think about it. Wang Long touched the serum, and saliva almost flowed out of the corners of his mouth. Ling Feng took out 5 serums that were obviously different in color from other nutrient solutions and handed them to Wang Long. This is for you high-level people. Just forward it to them. After Ling Feng finished speaking, he didn't care about Wang Long's expression and turned around to continue talking to Zheng Sanbao. Zheng Sanbao just heard them talking about nutrient solution, serum, and other names. He had never heard of them, so he simply ignored them. Ling Feng sat on the sofa. I wonder what the leader wants to ask. Zheng Sanbao asked curiously. The matter of Creation Mountain. Ling Feng directly and straightforwardly stated his purpose. Zheng Sanbao's face froze. He knew that Ling Feng would ask him about this sooner or later, but he didn't expect it to be so soon. I don't know what the leader wants to know. I only want to know one thing. That is, how many exotic fruits are there in Creation Mountain, and what are the effects? Zheng Sanbao thought for a while and said slowly. The Creation Mountain is connected to the Daxing Mountain Range and has a large area. Since ancient times, it has been the favorite place for hermits. Not only is it sparsely populated, but there are also many precious medicinal herbs and plants. After the end of the world, many plants have mutated and produced exotic fruits. But there are opportunities and dangers. There are many beasts in the Creation Mountain. Because they have changed after eating exotic fruits, they are powerful. Some can even endanger the strong above the emperor level. The exotic fruits on the periphery of the Creation Mountain have basically been collected by those hermits. The exotic fruits inside are basically not touched because they are too dangerous. In addition, many plants are extremely toxic. I know of a strange grass similar to dandelion. As long as a person's skin is contaminated, the skin will rot quickly, and finally the whole person will become a pile of rotten meat. After Zheng Sanbao finished speaking, he looked at Ling Feng with a serious face. After listening to Zheng Sanbao's description, Ling Feng was not afraid but more excited. The Creation Mountain is so big, there must be a lot of exotic fruits inside, and few people go to the core area, so the effect inside must be stronger. When the time comes, I can not only get the exotic fruit, but also the inner elixir of the exotic beast, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. However, the Creation Mountain is not suitable for the army to go, so I will go there alone to harvest it. After making up his mind, Ling Feng stood up and prepared to leave. Zheng Sanbao persuaded sincerely. Leader, the Creation Mountain is very dangerous. You should think about it carefully. Ling Feng nodded perfunctorily. Old Zheng, if you set off, I will call you, and you will accompany me and help you get revenge." Ling Feng left after saying that. Zheng Sanbao sighed as he looked at Ling Feng's back and sat back on the sofa to drink, but there was a hint of reminiscence in his eyes. After Ling Feng returned to the villa, he began to prepare to attack the Kai family and the Lu family. The Kai family and the Lu family are now much weaker, and they have long posed no threat to the God of War base, but Ling Feng will take revenge if he has a grudge. These forces have attacked their territory many times, so this matter cannot be let go. In addition to these two families, there is also the White Clothes Divine Cult. After sweeping away the Kai family and the Lu family, they will also completely destroy the White Clothes Divine Cult. After destroying these three forces, the entire Han, there are basically no major forces in Handong Province. Except for MK and the Dragon Slayer Society, two forces hidden in the dark. It is also very simple to completely eliminate the roots of these two forces in Handong. As long as the whole Handong is unified and Handong Province becomes the Handong Province of his Ares base, these foreign separatists will have no place to hide. This is also Ling Feng's current plan. When all the soldiers have used up the King of Soldiers' serum and nutrient solution, they can start preparing for this matter. In addition, the Ares base should also change its headquarters. Jinling, the capital of Handong, is an ideal place. It is not only the central location of the entire Handong province, but also located in the plains, and it is very convenient to go to various surrounding cities. Jinling has been a battleground for military strategists since ancient times, and it is very suitable to be the headquarters of the Ares base. Where can I better manage all the bases in Handong province and let the Ares base move to a bigger stage? Just when Ling Feng was planning how to build a base in Jinling, Kai Haonan, who was far away in Jinling, was having a very hard time. Since reaching a consensus on cooperation with the Lu family, the Lu family's demands have become more and more excessive. First, they asked him to join MK Company, and then they asked him to take out most of his reserve materials and give them to the Lu family. Although Kai Haonan was very angry, he dared not speak out. After all, his thigh had been killed by Ling Feng, and Ling Feng might attack him one day. With only the few people he had now, he could not stop Ling Feng's attack. In order to survive, Kai Haonan could only swallow his anger and agree to the Lu family's request. That day, just when Kai Haonan was sighing, his son Kai Yongkong knocked on the door and walked in. He said with a smile on his face, "Dad, I'm here to tell you a good news." Kai Haonan looked at him unhappily. His son was ignorant all day long, and he only knew how to eat, drink, and have fun every day. He still refused to repent at this time. Kai Haonan glanced at his son and said unhappily, "What's the matter? Tell me quickly. I'm annoyed." "Dad, someone came to me today and said he was from Longping Base. He said he could help us get out of trouble." Kai Haonan's expression changed. "What? Longping Base?" Chapter 190. Kai Haonan looked at his adopted son with a suspicious look. Now, apart from eating, drinking, and having fun, when has he ever cared about family affairs? Moreover, what kind of existence is Longping Base? How could they possibly find their little Kalaimi? Although the Kai family can have a say in Jinling, it is still a far cry from Longping Base. After all, Longping Base controls the entire Jiangnan province, and no base in the nearby provinces can compete with Longping Base. You kid are not lying to me, are you? It's time now, and you still have the time to joke with me? Kai Haonan looked at Kai Yongkong and said unhappily. Kai Yongkong immediately became anxious when he heard this, and said seriously with his right hand raised to the sky, "I swear to God, what I said is true. Don't tell me any lies, or I will die without any descendants." "Fuck you, you little bastard. What nonsense are you talking about?" Kai Haonan kicked Kai Kongyong off the sofa and looked at him speechlessly. He is the only son left. Isn't this a curse for his Kai family to die without any descendants? Kai Kongyong also found that he seemed to have said something wrong. He patted his butt and stood up from the ground, scratching his head with a silly smile. "Dad, what I said is true. He is really from Longping Base. He is in our Lu family now." Kai Haonan looked at his son and didn't look like he was lying. Moreover, He shouldn't dare to make such a joke at the moment of life and death of the family. If Longping Base really intervened, wouldn't his Kai family be stable this time? Not only would they not be afraid of Ling Feng's liquidation, they would not have to hand over huge amounts of materials to the Liu family, and they could also rely on a super thigh. Kai Haonan looked at his son with some excitement and couldn't wait to stand up from the sofa. If it is really someone sent by Longping Base, don't neglect him. Take me there now. Don't let him wait anxiously. He pulled himself, Kai Yongkong, from the sofa and walked outside. The two came to the reception room of the Kai family. Kai Haonan stood at the door with some trepidation. For a moment, the head of the family, who was famous in Jinling, was a little excited. He took a few deep breaths, tidied his clothes and sparse hair, and pushed the door and walked in. In the reception room, a man about 30 years old was sitting on the sofa and flipping through the magazine in his hand casually. The man had a serious face and looked serious. His skin was slightly dark, his body was strong, and he looked neat and tidy with a short haircut. Kai Haonan saw at a glance that this person should be a soldier. Judging from the aura he exuded, his strength was above him, and he must be at least a king-level supernatural person. Seeing someone coming in, the man was still looking at the magazine in his hand, and he didn't stand up to greet him. Kai Haonan was not angry, and he was secretly happy. Judging from this person's style of behavior, this person's identity is almost certain to be true. People who come out of the big base are a little arrogant. If they are really polite, he really doubts his identity. Kai Haonan walked to the man's side with a smile on his face and said enthusiastically, "Hello, sir. I am Kai Haonan, the head of the Kai family. I have kept you waiting for a long time. I hope you will forgive me for my poor hospitality." The man glanced at him, put down the magazine in his hand, and slowly stood up. "Hello, Mr. Liu. I am Long Kaiyu from Longping Base. Please forgive me for my presumptuous visit," the man said coldly. "Oh, you're being polite. It is our honor for you to come to our Kai family." Kai Haonan said polite words with a smile. Long Kaiyu motioned Kai Haonan to sit down. "In that case, I'll get straight to the point. I heard that the Kai family is experiencing a crisis recently. I'm here to help the head of the Kai family solve the problem." Kai Haonan's face lit up with joy, and a hint of intention flashed in his eyes. "Great. With your words, the crisis of our Kai family this time is not a big problem. But that Ling Feng is still very powerful." After saying this, there was a trace of worry on his face. Long Kaiyu smiled faintly. "Don't worry. Head of the Kai family, Ling Feng won't dare to come. Our base has sent people to negotiate with him. If he knows the situation, leave him a way out. Otherwise, he won't live to see tomorrow," Long Kaiyu said with confidence. Kai Haonan was surprised and happy. He didn't expect that Longping Base acted so quickly. Before he even said a word, the matter was solved. It is indeed a large base. Just a few words can solve his life and death crisis. "Thank you very much, Commander Long. I just don't know what conditions your base has for helping our Kai family solve such a big problem," Kai Haonan asked tentatively. "As expected of you, you are the head of the Kai family. I like you that I like dealing with smart people." Long Kaiyu raised his lips slightly and continued. "I am here on behalf of the base this time. Our conditions are very simple. The Kai family joins the Longping Base. From now on, Jinling will become the area of the Longping Base, and the head of the Liu family will become the manager of the base in Jinling. What does the head of the Kai family think?" After Long Kaiyu finished speaking, he looked at Kai Haonan with sharp eyes. Kai Haonan's scalp was numb by Long Kaiyu's gaze. As the controller of Jinling, he would definitely not be willing to accept this condition. Once he joins the Longping Base, he will be controlled by others everywhere. "I am afraid that all the materials in his hands may have to be handed over," Kai Haonan said with a dry smile. "Commander Long, our Jinling is not as rich as Jiangnan, and the materials are very scarce. I don't know why the base wants to enter Handong Province." Long Kaiyu looked at Kai Haonan meaningfully and said, "This is our Longping strategic plan. After the apocalypse, the global forces have undergone a reshuffle. Whoever can have more resources and superpowers in the future will be able to gain advantages and seize the initiative in the future society. Our goal is not only Jinling, but the entire Handong. In the future, the entire Handong will be our Longping territory, and this is what stands behind our Longping base. Long Kaiyu said, pointing to the sky. Kai Haonan looked at Long Kaiyu's gesture and asked uncertainly, "Is it official?" Long Kaiyu smiled slightly and acquiesced. Kai Haonan's expression changed, and his heart was immediately in turmoil. It was the first time he knew that Longping had such a big background. No wonder Longping base had developed to an extremely powerful level in just half a year after the end of the world. It turned out that the official was behind it. Knowing that he was indirectly talking to the official, Kai Haonan did not dare to have any lucky thoughts and immediately agreed to Long Kaiyu's conditions. Long Kaiyu was very satisfied with the righteousness of the head of the Kai family. Head of the Kai family, then I congratulate you on joining our organization. Long Kaiyu smiled and stretched out his hand to Kai Haonan. Kai Haonan quickly stood up, and the two held hands tightly together. I will definitely serve the base well. Kai Haonan also promised with a serious face, but he asked a question with some worry. What about Ling Feng? Don't worry. Our people have gone to negotiate. Kai Haonan showed a look of relief on his face. Just as the two were talking, Kai Haonan's phone rang. After Kai Haonan took out his phone and saw the name of the phone, he immediately smiled and said, "Look, the phone rang. I guess the negotiation is complete." Chapter 191. Kai Haonan also smiled. Long Kaiyu confidently clicked the call button. Soon the smile on his face froze in place. What? Long Kaiyu's face darkened instantly. Then he pressed the phone hard. Captain Long this? Kai Haonan asked cautiously. Long Kaiyu looked extremely ugly, and the murderous intent in his eyes flashed. This Ares base is so bold that he dared to kill the negotiators we sent over. He is so arrogant. Kai Haonan was shocked. This Ling Feng is so tough that he dared to kill even the people from Longping base. He is really looking for death. However, in this case, Longping base will definitely not let Ling Feng go. Kai Haonan was secretly happy. Now Ling Feng will definitely be retaliated by Longping base. His revenge can be regarded as someone avenging him. This Ling Feng is so unreasonable that he killed our people in Longping base for no reason. Isn't this a slap in the face of our base? Kai Haonan said angrily on the side, and then fanned the flames. Long Kaiyu smiled coldly, his eyes narrowed slightly. Since this Ling Feng doesn't know how to appreciate it, there is no need for him to stay. After saying that, he took his mobile phone and walked out of the room, probably to get someone. Kai Haonan looked at Long Kaiyu's back and showed a wicked smile. Time goes back to 4 hours ago. Ling Feng got up early and prepared to check the training of the God of War Brigade, as well as the use of the King of Soldiers No. 3 serum and nutrient solution. At this time, except for some guards and those who were on duty, all other members of the God of War Brigade were gathered in the military square for military training. Although the strength of the God of War Brigade is already very strong, the daily military training must be carried out normally, which is also a special requirement of Ling Feng. It is mainly to maintain the cohesion, teamwork ability, and team honor of the team members. On the square, veterans are doing routine training on one side, and a group of new recruits are receiving devilish training from the instructors on the other side. This group of new recruits has obviously improved a lot since the last time they saw it, and more importantly, everyone's face is full of fighting spirit. Because they have received the injection of the King of Soldiers No. 1 serum, they feel the sense of accomplishment brought by the improvement of strength, and coupled with Ling Feng's incentive mechanism, they now want to train 24 hours a day, and everyone is competing for training, fearing that others will surpass themselves and be eliminated. Ling Feng looked at this group of high-spirited new recruits with great satisfaction. These are all his future main forces. Ling Feng called the chief instructor of the new recruits, Ma Wu. Old Ma, it is best to train new recruits in the underground training ground of the shelter. We should learn from the previous air raids. These new recruits are not strong enough and can't withstand the shells. Ma Wu nodded. After I finish the current subject training, I will let them return to the underground training ground. Ling Feng made a few simple arrangements and asked Ma Wu to continue organizing the training. Ling Feng walked to the training ground of the God of War Brigade, where the team members were practicing small group combat. The team members formed a team of 30 people and carried out attack and defense conversion and tactical training movements. Wang Long supervised and inspected the training of each team. After seeing Ling Feng, he immediately ran over. "How is the effect of God of War 3? Ling Feng asked while watching the soldiers' training. Wang Long gave Ling Feng a thumbs up and said excitedly, "The effect is simply great. Now you have a king-level team. Now they have all reached 2,200 points, and some have even reached 2,800 points. Fengzi, the future of our God of War base, must be invincible." Ling Feng was also very happy, but he still had to knock Wang Long for being too arrogant. "There are always people who are better than you. We are only the king of Handong now. There are many bases stronger than us. Remember to be modest and not blindly confident." Wang Long put away his smile and nodded. "Now that our soldiers have completed the final preparations, can we send troops to Jinling?" Ling Feng pondered for a moment. "Let's set the time for tomorrow. The soldiers have just completed the upgrade work today. Let them adapt to their current strength first." While the two were talking, a guard ran over to report. "Chief, there is a group of people claiming to be from Longping Base. They want to see you at the gate of the base and say they have something important to discuss." Longping Base. Ling Feng's eyes turned. He has heard of this base. Its strength is indeed good, but the location of that base is Pan in Jiangnan Province. How did he come to me? I'm not close to Jiangnan Province. Has he ever had any contact with this base? Why did he come here suddenly? Ling Feng pondered for 2 seconds and finally decided to let this group of people in. "Just take them to the training ground?" "Yes." The sentry immediately took out the intercom and began to restore the sentry at the door. After a while, a sentry led 5 or 6 people towards the officialdom. They looked left and right at the base, commenting on it from time to time, but it was not difficult to see from his eyes that he was full of contempt for this place. Among the few people, the one walking in front was a middle-aged man about 40 years old. The man was fat and of medium build, with a hint of cunning in his eyes. The sentry brought the few people to Ling Feng's side and turned to say to them, "This is the highest leader of our base, Leader Ling, the boss among the few people." The middle-aged man stepped forward and said in a somewhat defiant tone, "I am Fan Kaoyong from Longping Base, and you are the leader of Ares Base?" Ling Feng looked at this person calmly. "Yes. What do you want from me?" Fan Kaoyong was very surprised by Ling Feng's reaction. He didn't expect that he was not surprised to hear the name of his Longping base, nor did he flatter him, which made him a little dissatisfied. However, before he came, the higher-ups specifically explained that Ares Base was quite strong. If it is not necessary, don't have any conflicts with Ares Base. Try to recruit them peacefully, and by the way, resolve the hatred between Ares Base and Jinling Kai family, so that the two families can shake hands and make peace is the best. Fan Kaoyong endured the displeasure in his heart and said in a deep voice, "Since Chief Ling asked, I will tell you straight away. Our base wants to invite you and your base to join our Longping base. You must have heard of the strength of our Longping base. Joining us will only benefit you, not harm you. Not only can we provide you with strong protection, but also give you the opportunity to unify the entire Shangjing city." Fan Kaoyong looked at Ling Feng after he finished speaking, waiting for Ling Feng's reply. Ling Feng smiled disdainfully and said without thinking, Chapter 192. I'm not interested in your base. Our Ares base will not join any base. If you are here for this matter, you can go back. After listening to Ling Feng's words, Fan Kaoyong frowned slightly. This was completely different from what he expected. Ares base, a small base, actually didn't give him face. He came to negotiate on behalf of Longping base. Not only did he not get the due respect, but was also ordered to leave, which made him a little embarrassed. Are you sure you want to reject our invitation, Chief Ling? You have to think about it carefully. In addition, I will tell you one more thing. We have an official background. Don't go the wrong way. Fan Kaoyong's words were a little threatening. Ling Feng glanced at him coldly, not caring about Fan Kaoyong's words. I said that the Ares base will not join any organization. Didn't you understand? Fan Saoyang's eyes were gloomy and he looked dissatisfied. A subordinate standing behind him couldn't help but say, "Your Ares base is just a small base. Don't be ungrateful. We are trying to persuade you. Don't be shameless." When Wang Long, who had a hot temper, heard that the other party dared to speak to Ling Feng like this, he immediately cursed. "Who do you think you are? How dare you speak to our Ares base like this? Believe it or not, I will make sure you can't leave this place today." Ling Feng looked disdainful at this little character's harsh words. "What can you do? Do you still want to flatten my base?" Fan Shuoyang interrupted his subordinates who wanted to speak and said to Ling Feng calmly, "Chief Ling, I'll tell you the truth. It's an inevitable trend for our Longping base to lead the entire Handong province in the future. Do you think your Ares base can resist our Iron Division with its strength? Also, the second thing I came here for today is about the Jinling Kai family. The Jinling Kai family has agreed to join our Longping base. I heard that you and the Kai family have some grievances. I hope that your grievances can be resolved now." Ling Feng looked at him deeply and said in a deep voice, "The grievance between our base and Kai Ji is a life-and-death feud. I don't care what base he joins. We must destroy this Kai family. Anyone who dares to stop us is an enemy of me, Ling Feng, even if you are from Longping base." Ling Feng's voice was loud, and the soldiers who were training not far away immediately turned their heads and looked at the people from Longping base with unfriendly eyes. A trace of viciousness flashed across Wang Longzhong's face, and he said coldly, "Get out of here, or don't blame me for being rude to you." Fan Shuoyang laughed in anger and said with a ferocious face, Okay, Ling Feng, I've given you a chance. Since you insist on being an enemy of my Longping base, let's wait and see. Just wait to accept the wrath of our Longping base." A trace of coldness flashed across Ling Feng's eyes, and he slapped Fan Shuoyang in the air. Bang! With a sound, Fan Shuoyang was slapped into a ball of blood mist. Ling Feng's sudden move caught Fan Shuoyang's subordinates off guard, and they were stunned in place. Fan Shuoyang's warm blood splashed on their faces. The man who had just said harsh words to Ling Feng trembled, and his face turned pale as paper. They really didn't expect Ling Feng to be so cruel, killing as he said, and didn't care about their identity in Longping base at all. At this moment, the remaining few people showed a look of fear and dared not look directly into Ling Feng's eyes. "Go back and tell the boss of your base that Handong province does not welcome your Longping base. If you dare to come to Handong, I will kill as many of you as you come. Get out!" As if they were pardoned, several people turned around and fled, using all their strength, fearing that Ling Feng would go back on his word. After several people fled, they immediately told Long Kaiyu everything that happened here. There was the scene where Long Kaiyu got angry. Long Kaiyu quickly reported the matter to the headquarters of Longping base and requested the headquarters to cover the entire Ares base with artillery fire and eliminate air fire. The head of the military department quickly reported Long Kaiyu's expression in writing to Long Outyin, the person in charge of the base. Long Outyin sat in his 100-square-meter luxurious office, wearing comfortable casual clothes and handling various documents every day, as usual. As the head of a superpower, Long Outyin has a lot of things to do every day. When he saw the application for using firepower to cover the Ares base, he didn't pay much attention to it. He just simply looked at it and signed it directly. Little did he know that this signature would bring immeasurable losses to his entire Longping base. After getting the consent of the base leader, the head of the military department quickly notified Long Outyin of the matter Kaiyu, and immediately began to mobilize hundreds of aircraft, including 10 bombers to carry out the bombing mission. The fighter group will take off on time at 4 p.m., and it is expected to reach the destination in 2 hours to bomb the entire Ares base. Long Kaiyu was overjoyed to receive this news, and the smile on his mouth could not be suppressed. At this time, Long Kaiyu was eating at the banquet held by Kai Haonan. He was originally in a bad mood, but after seeing this news, he immediately smiled. Kai Haonan, who was good at observing words and expressions, also noticed the change in Long Kaiyu's expression and immediately picked up a bottle of Mauzi and poured a glass for Long Kaiyu. "Captain Long, is there any news from the base?" Long Kaiyu picked up the wine glass at hand and drank it all, and said with a relaxed look, "That's right. The base has sent hundreds of planes to carry out a blanket bombing of the Ares base. The entire Ares base will be blown into a pile of ruins under the huge firepower. Before tonight, Ling Feng will kneel down and beg me to let him go." Kai Haonan was delighted when he heard this. "Great. This way, the Ares base will exist in name only. I didn't expect that a small Ares base would provoke our Ares base so much. It's really asking for death. It deserves it." After saying that, he raised the wine glass in his hand and toasted Long Kaiyu. "Commander Long helped our Kai family to avenge a great revenge. That Ling Feng killed my son and killed many superpowers in my Kai family. I thought there was no hope of revenge in this life, but I didn't expect the base to avenge me today. Now I finally get my revenge. I toast to Commander Long." After saying that, he drank the wine in the glass. Long Kaiyu was very happy. Master Kai has a huge capacity for drinking. You will definitely achieve great things in Longping Base in the future. The top leader of our base, Long Shuai, said that brothers who can drink 1 or 2 taels are generous enough. Brothers who can drink 3 or 8 taels are the ones to be cultivated. Come on, Master Kai, let's drink one more. Chapter 193. The two of them became more and more familiar with each other as they toasted each other. And with Kai Haonan's speciality of being good at communication, Long Kaiyu's favorability towards Kai Haonan increased sharply. When the two were drinking with their arms around each other, Kai Haonan suddenly put down his glass with an abnormal look and sighed softly. This abnormal behavior was soon noticed by Long Kaiyu, who said with a slight blush on his cheeks and a hint of drunkenness, "Brother Kai, what's wrong? What's bothering you? Tell me, and let me solve it for you." Kai Haonan sighed again and said with a complicated look, "It's better for Brother Long not to interfere in this matter. This matter involves foreign forces. The other side is not small. I'm afraid it will be difficult for you to solve it." Long Kaiyu was angry when he heard this, and the drunkenness also subsided a little. He said in a serious tone, "What? There are foreign forces involved. I have to take care of this even more. Our Longping base is directly under the government, and we have the obligation to expel all foreign opposition forces." "Who is it?" Kai Haonan didn't dare to hide his expression when he saw Long Kaiyu's expression, and said immediately, "It's MK Company. Before you came, MK sent the Liu family to negotiate with me. They wanted me to join MK to work for them, and asked me to hand over half of the supplies to them, so that they promised to protect my safety. But as a Long countryman, how could I agree to the request of these foreigners? So I haven't replied to them. Lu Guanyu, the head of the Liu family, is now in Jinling. If I don't agree to their request, they may take tough measures against me." Kai Haonan had a bitter look on his face. Long Kaiyu frowned, and his expression suddenly became gloomy. This Liu family actually dared to surrender to MK and betray their own country. They are really worthy of death. And this MK company is blatantly invading our Long country. It's really bold. Where is this Lu Guanyu now? Call him over. I want to talk to him." Kai Haonan was ecstatic. It seemed that he had found the right master by surrendering to Longping Base. He really went to work when there was something wrong. He was much better than the wretched Japanese before. "Lu Guanyu, I arranged for him to live in a shelter next to the Liu family. He should still be there now. I'll call him over now." Kai Haonan walked out after he finished speaking. At this time, Long Kaiyu edited a report on this matter and reported it to the base. The base has always hated MK Company and the Japanese Dragon Slayer Society. They took advantage of the end of the world and the decline of official rule to take advantage of the opportunity. They wreaked havoc in Long Country and lured and corrupted other bases, hoping to slowly invade in this way. Longping Base has wiped out several strongholds of these two organizations throughout Jiangnan Province. Unexpectedly, they met again in Handong. Long Kaiyu immediately reported the matter, which was a great achievement. Half an hour later, Kai Haonan walked into the room with a handsome and fair-skinned young man. Lu Guanyu frowned when he smelled the strong smell of alcohol and cigarettes in the room. He doesn't smoke or drink, and he has misophobia, and he is extremely disgusted with this bad environment. Lu Guanyu took out a white handkerchief from his pocket and covered his nose. Long Kaiyu looked at Lu Guanyu's look of disgust and snorted coldly. "Are you Lu Guanyu, the head of the Lu family?" Lu Guanyu glanced at the man on the table. Kai Haonan had told him his identity on the way. "Hello, Commander Long. I am Lu Guanyu, the current head of the Lu family." Long Kaiyu looked Lu Guanyu up and down. Seeing that this guy looked so weak, a trace of disdain flashed in his heart. "I heard that you have surrendered to MK. Is this true?" Long Kaiyu stared at him sharply and asked in a stern tone. Lu Guanyu looked normal and was not at all flustered when facing Long Kaiyu's questioning. "Commander Long, I have indeed joined MK. We have some business dealings and some cooperative projects. This is cooperation and cannot be said to be surrender." "Bullshit!" Long Kaiyu slapped the table, scaring Lu Guanyu. "Don't think I don't know what you and MK do. Let me tell you, our base knows everything about MK and has investigated and dealt with several of their bases. Don't argue with me here." Lu Guanyu's eyes flashed with a trace of panic. He didn't expect this guy to know so much about MK. This is a bit troublesome. His eyes rolled, and he immediately lowered his head and said with some difficulty, "Commander Long, please forgive me. I have no choice. If I don't join MK Company, they will find a way annex ours. And they promised me that they would help me deal with the Ares base. Ling Feng from the Ares base killed my father, and my two uncles were all killed by Ling Feng. I am also eager for revenge," Lu Guanyu said with tears in his eyes, which made the originally unhappy Long Kaiyu's face gradually ease. "I will give you a chance now. Join the Longping base, and I will solve Ling Feng's problems for you." Long Kaiyu looked at him indifferently and said, "As long as the Longping base can protect the safety of our Lu family, I am willing to join." Lu Guanyu gritted his teeth and said. Long Kaiyu nodded with satisfaction. "Very good. Now you go back to the Lu family. I will help you solve Ling Feng's problems, and in the future our Longping base in Handong province will slowly enter, and you must cooperate well at that time. You go back and stabilize the MK people first. I will settle accounts with them." Lu Guanyu was shocked. He didn't expect that the Longping base had such a big plan. It actually wanted to swallow up the whole Handong. Now Handong is really going to change. "Yes, I will go back now and be ready for the leaders of the base to come and guide the work at any time." Lu Guanyu bowed respectfully to Long Kaiyu, then turned and left. Long Kaiyu raised his arm, revealing the Rolex watch on his arm, checked the time, and smiled. "It's almost time. The good show at the God of War base will start soon." After killing Fan Shuoyang, Ling Feng immediately arranged for the Ares Brigade to intensify patrols, especially air patrols. Armed helicopters patrolled continuously to prevent the other side from launching another air attack. The work on the ground was also completely stopped, leaving only some secret sentries. Ling Feng guessed that with the strength of Longping base, they would most likely send planes to launch an airstrike on the Ares base. Ling Feng's countermeasure was very simple, that is, let him bomb it. Anyway, he couldn't blow up his villa, and the underground shelter was deep underground, so it couldn't cause damage. "I will soon send troops to Jinling to build a new base in Jinling. This place is not very useful to me. But no matter what level of strong people they send, don't think about going back." Chapter 194. After arranging all the work, Ling Feng returned to the villa to continue his research. As the management system of the base became more and more perfect, the management staff gradually got on track, and he, the top leader of the base, was the most idle one. He is now ready to continue his in-depth research on blood. The golden component in the blood has always been his key research direction, but he has not yet figured out why his blood slowly turns golden. The research lasted until 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Ling Feng, who was conducting research, suddenly received a call from Wang Long, saying that an unknown group of aircraft had entered the airspace of Shangjing City. The number of the opposite side was very large, and there were 10 bombers. At present, The aircraft responsible for patrolling the base has clashed with the opposite group of aircraft in the air and is now fighting. Ling Feng put down his work and walked out of the villa. At this time, all the personnel on the ground of the base had been evacuated, except for some secret guards who were still hiding on the ground. Ling Feng looked into the distance, and the sound of dense gunfire came from afar. Black Panther! Ling Feng shouted to the Black Panther lying at the door of the villa. The Black Panther, who was originally lying on the ground and sleeping boredly, suddenly appeared in front of Ling Feng. Ling Feng jumped on the Black Panther's back and patted his neck. Follow the sound of gunfire and take a look. Woof, woof, woof. The Black Panther shouted excitedly a few times and instantly turned on his extreme speed and ran towards the sound of gunfire at full speed. It took the Black Panther less than 5 minutes to reach the place where the two sides fought. This is the border area of Shangjing City. The 15 armed helicopters of the God of War base fought against the 100 planes on the opposite side. The fighting between the two sides was very fierce. There were traces of being hit on the wings of many planes on the Longping base, and some had begun to emit black smoke. The wreckage of 7 or 8 downed planes on the ground was burning, all of which were planes on the opposite side. Ling Feng was absolutely sure of his planes. After all, they were upgraded 100 times and were much stronger than those at Longping base. Even though the number of the other side was 10 times his, he was still suppressed. Soon, more than a dozen planes were shot down one after another. Huang Yu, the captain of the flight brigade in charge of this combat mission at Longping base, was in a very complicated mood. He watched his pilots being shot down one by one. These pilots were all trained by him personally, and they were all treasures in the base, but now they were falling quickly. Originally, he thought that this bombing mission was just a simple and safe mission, but he didn't expect to encounter an unprecedented life-and-death crisis. At present, 1/3 of the planes have been shot down. There are still more than a dozen planes that have received varying degrees of damage. The loss this time can be said to be incalculable. After the end of the world, the production line of the aircraft has been gone, and these planes can be said to be one less for each broken one. What made him most uncomfortable was that the opponent's plane was too durable. Several shells hit the opponent's body, but it was unscathed. Even the propeller of the opponent could not be blown up. It was really shocking. The plane on his side was the most advanced in the world, but the opponent's plane was more powerful than theirs. Huang Yi took out the intercom and issued an order to everyone on the public channel. All personnel should turn around and return now. Don't fight. The performance of the opponent's plane is very strong in all aspects. Don't fight head-on again. The pilots of other planes began to turn around and prepare to evacuate. They had been waiting for the captain's words. Everyone understood that the opponent's strength was impossible to defeat. If the stalemate continued, it would be very likely that the whole army would be wiped out in the end. Standing on the ground and watching the battle, Ling Feng saw that the opponent was about to escape and immediately ordered Wang Long to let all the planes in the base take off and follow the opponent's plane to carry out a reverse bombing on them. After receiving the order, Wang Long excitedly drove a helicopter himself and flew the helicopter team to the camp of Longping base. Ling Feng did not continue to chase, but went back to the villa. He could just arrange for Wang Long to do the rest. With his current strength, there was no problem at all. He just had to go back and wait for the news. As for those planes, Ling Feng did not intend to leave them, but let Wang Long destroy them directly and teach Longping base a profound lesson, letting him know that he was not easy to mess with. Under the leadership of Wang Long, the flight formation of the God of War base bit the Longping fleet tightly and launched a round of fire from time to time. The number of planes on Longping's side continued to decrease. When they returned to the vicinity of the base, there were only a dozen planes left, of which less than 10 could be used normally. Almost all of them were annihilated. The upper part of Longping base in the air, dozens of armed helicopters had been waiting for a long time in order to welcome Huang Yu's fleet. As soon as they were ready to return, Huang Yu reported the failure of this battle to the command room of the base. After hearing the news, the command room was very angry. Not only did they lose nearly 100 aircraft in this operation, but more importantly, such a large base was attacked by others. The military commander of the base, Su-hu, was sitting on the command platform at this moment, looking at the big screen in front of him with a gloomy expression. This was the biggest loss since the establishment of the entire base. The air combat formation has always been the advantage of Longping Base. This time, it actually lost nearly half of its number, which greatly reduced its strength. If the boss knew about it, he would definitely let him resign voluntarily. In order to keep his position, he immediately convened all the senior executives to hold a meeting and arrange combat tasks. Over there in the artillery camp, pull out all the artillery you can mobilize and shoot them hard for me later, Su-hu said viciously to an officer next to him. In addition, all the planes that can still take off will be launched soon, and we will prepare for the reception. Leave all the enemies chasing us here. Get ready now and enter the combat state. Dismissed. Su-hu quickly arranged the tasks and returned to the command room. He took out a cigarette from the drawer, lit it, and took a few puffs. Damn it. Then he immediately took out his mobile phone and called the canteen. Cook fewer dishes tonight. I don't have much appetite. Just cook 7 or 8 dishes. Forget the roasted whole lamb. Just make a roast duck and eat it casually. Su-hu hung up the phone and sighed deeply. The quality of life has been getting worse and worse recently. In a few days, I can only smoke wazi. Alas! Su-hu sighed and stared at the screen in the command room carefully, ready to deal with the enemy's attack at any time. Chapter 195. Half an hour later, Su-hu, who was dozing on the table, was awakened by a hurried voice. Commander, enemy planes are coming. Su-hu woke up suddenly, wiped the saliva from the corners of his mouth, stared at the screen, and saw dozens of red dots on the radar. Everyone, be alert immediately and prepare to counterattack. Su-hu's order was issued, and the entire command center immediately took action. 50 helicopters took off and drove quickly towards the enemy to prepare for interception. The ground forces were also fully prepared, and all artillery was loaded with ammunition, aiming at the sky and ready to fire at any time. On the other side, Wang Long led the fleet, constantly shooting at the enemy planes in front, and had a lot of fun. Suddenly, an air formation appeared again in the distance and quickly attacked the fleet of the God of War Brigade from both sides. A gleam of light flashed in Wang Long's eyes. He immediately picked up the walkie-talkie and issued combat missions to the others. Team 1, you are responsible for blocking the aircraft group on the left. Team 2 is responsible for the aircraft group on the right, and Team 3 will follow me to bomb their base. After Wang Long finished speaking, the entire formation was instantly divided into 3. Wang Long led 10 helicopters loaded with ammunition and rushed straight to the airport of the base. Longping's air formation soon discovered Wang Long's intention and quickly separated 20 aircraft to intercept. Wang Long looked at the planes blocking in front of him and snorted coldly. He directly slowed down the speed of the plane and crashed directly into an opposite plane. The pilot of the plane was shocked when he saw the plane crashing towards him quickly. He didn't expect that the other party would use such a desperate fighting method. He immediately raised the height of the helicopter to avoid it, but the opposite plane also pulled up to the same height as him. He wanted to change direction again, but it was too late. The flying speed of the opposite plane was too fast. Wang Long directly smashed the propeller of his plane, and the whole plane instantly lost power and fell rapidly to the ground. After dealing with one plane, Wang Long directly tore a hole in the encirclement on the opposite side, and other planes followed suit and rushed towards the enemy planes. Some of the pilots with good driving skills on the Longping base barely avoided the collision, but most of them were smashed. After shaking off these attacks, Wang Long led the formation to the sky above the Longping base quickly and began to attack the base below indiscriminately. The entire ground instantly turned into a sea of fire. The person in charge of the artillery unit was overjoyed when he saw that the base was flying at a very low altitude. At this altitude, as long as they hit, the opponent would have no chance of survival. Fire! With an order, hundreds of artillery pieces fired instantly, and the entire ground shook violently. The powerful shells whizzed towards the helicopters in the air. The helicopter group was instantly hit. The artillery unit on the ground instantly cheered, and everyone had a happy smile on their faces. However, this smile only existed for half a second, and the artillery position was instantly covered by artillery fire. They never understood until they died that they had been hit. But why was the other side fine? After dealing with the artillery, they flew the plane to quickly launch artillery attacks on the entire Longping base. Ling Feng had instructed them to fight quickly and decisively, as the other side might have experts, so they must not fight to the death. After Wang Long completed the task, he cleared all the shells and bullets, and immediately began to return home with the fleet. Long Outyen, the leader of the Longping base, was originally enjoying a sumptuous dinner. The sudden sound of artillery fire startled him. Especially the walls of his restaurant began to shake violently, and a lot of dust fell into his food. Long Outyen frowned, immediately called Su Hu, and as soon as the call was connected, he was scolded. Su Hu, why did you give me a plane? What's going on? Do you want to demolish the base? Su Hu kept nodding and apologizing, saying in a humble tone, Leader, I'm really sorry. Our base was attacked by air raid. The planes from the opposite side broke through the heavy blockade. Our aircraft formation was directly destroyed. The 1st Artillery Battalion was completely wiped out. Ling Outyen was furious when he heard this. Every word Su Hu said was like a knife cutting his chest. What are you doing? Let the people from the opposite side attack directly to my doorstep and cause so many losses to my elite troops. Who are they? Su Hu frowned and moved the phone away from his ear. Long Outyen's current volume could deafen him. They are from the God of War base, the one who applied for an air raid on them this morning. They are here to take revenge. God of War base. Long Outyen's face was extremely gloomy. This was the first time someone dared to do this to him, which made him lose face. How could he explain this to his big boss? In the end, he still had to scold him. Investigate this Ares base immediately and send me his information. Long Outyen hung up the phone directly after he finished speaking. Seeing the table full of delicacies, he lost interest in eating immediately. He was so angry that he turned the table over. Then he walked out of the room with a cold face. At this moment, in the command room of the Ares base, Wang Long was dancing and talking about today's actions. Ling Feng and other high-level officials of the base were sitting on the sofa listening to Wang Long pretending to be cool. I just swung my scorpion tail, and the L-98 on the opposite side was directly smashed into 2 halves. If our aircraft shells were not too few, I would blow up the Longping base into ruins. Ling Feng saw that Wang Long was getting more and more outrageous and quickly interrupted his speech. Okay, let's talk business. Did the psychic on the opposite side attack? Wang Long shook his head. We moved quickly. We retreated quickly after emptying our ammunition. We didn't encounter any psychic, and we were all in the sky. They couldn't attack even if they wanted to. Ling Feng nodded. Let the troops take a simple rest, refuel the helicopter, fill up the ammunition, and set off to Jinling. Wang Long immediately arranged it with excitement. Now everything is ready. The strength of the members of the God of War Brigade has exceeded 2,000 points, which has reached the king level. The top leaders of the base, such as Wang Long and Ma Wu, have exceeded 5,000 points, far exceeding the emperor level. Just like Zheng Sanbao could have defeated Wang Long, but now he can't beat Wang Long. Ling Feng is confident that the troops in his hands are not inferior to the armed forces of any base. An hour later, Wang Long came to Ling Feng's office. Fengzi, everything is ready. We can set off. Ling Feng nodded. I will lead the team myself this time. You and Ma Wu will go with us. Let's go. Chapter 196. Kai family in Jinling. When Long Kaiyu was drunk and playing games, he was suddenly disturbed by a phone ring. Long Kaiyu picked up the phone angrily, and when he saw the number, his anger immediately disappeared. He opened the phone and said respectfully, Commander Su, you are still calling me so late. Has the Ares base been destroyed? I just know that under your command, we will be invincible. Ha ha. Su on the other end of the phone felt his face being pressed to the ground and rubbed hard. He coughed dryly and said in a deep voice, Okay, there was a little mistake in the operation against the Ares base this time, and the operation was not completely successful. You must pay attention to it in Jinling. The Ares base is likely to attack Jinling, so you should be prepared for defense. Long Kaiyu immediately agreed. Okay, Commander, then do you think I should send some people from the headquarters here? The Kai family's troops are still a little weak, Long Kaiyu said cautiously. Suhu said angrily after hearing what he said. The base is a little short of manpower at the moment. You figure it out yourself? If it weren't for you, would the base have suffered such a huge loss? I wouldn't have been punished so severely with supplies halved. I can't even get Huazi anymore, and you're still asking me for soldiers, huh? Suhu sneered in his heart. After hearing what Suhu said, Long Kaiyu felt like the sky was falling. He was just a king-level superpower. How could he stop Ling Feng's attack? He hurriedly said to Suhu, Commander, I'm afraid I can't do it alone. Hey! Before he finished speaking, he found that the phone had been hung up, and he was so angry that he immediately cursed. Fuck you. Long Kaiyu sat on the bed. Without the support of the troops from the headquarters, how could he resist with the Kai family alone? No, I can't just sit there and wait for death. If I'm caught, I will definitely not survive. I must take measures. He immediately put on his clothes and said to the woman on the bed, Take me to your husband. I have something to discuss with him. Although the woman felt a little disappointed, she didn't dare to hesitate. She immediately put on her clothes and took Long Kaiyu to find Kai Haonan. The two soon came to Kai Haonan's room. Long Kaiyu quickly slapped the door. A few seconds later, Kai Haonan opened the room in a disheveled state. Long Kaiyu glanced into the room and saw several beautiful figures. He couldn't help but sigh secretly. He still knows how to play. Kai Haonan was a little surprised to see Long Kaiyu. Brother Long, it's so late. What are you doing? But when he saw his wife standing behind Long Kaiyu, his face immediately showed a look that all men understand. There was a lewd smile in his eyes. So you are also a fellow traveler. Come along. Long Kaiyu saw the guy's expression and knew he would misunderstand. So he said immediately, Let's do it another day. I have something serious to say about the Ares base. Kai Haonan's face changed, and he immediately put away his frivolous smile and asked, What's wrong? Has something happened again? Long Kaiyu nodded with an ugly look. Kai Haonan walked out of the room and simply tidied his clothes. Let's go to the study to talk in detail. The two came to the study, and Long Kaiyu said seriously, The headquarters action against the Ares base today failed. The headquarters asked us to do a good job of defense to prevent Ling Feng from leading troops to invade. Kai Haonan's face changed drastically, and a feeling of fear immediately surged into his heart. Even Longping base didn't kill the Ares base. How could he have the strength to compete with Ling Feng? Isn't this just waiting to die? He suddenly regretted joining Longping base. If he had known, he would have joined MK. Although he had a hand over half of the supplies, at least he wouldn't have to die. Then Brother Long, what should we do next? Kai Haonan said with some fear. Don't be afraid. No matter how powerful Ling Feng is, as long as we are fully prepared, we may not have no chance of winning. We can do this. Long Kaiyu immediately leaned over to Kai Haonan's ear and whispered a few words. Kai Haonan said with a somewhat ugly face, Will this work? Will Ling Feng believe it? Long Kaiyu said solemnly, There is no other way at the moment. I can only give it a try. Alas! Kai Haonan sighed and said, Then I will hurry up and prepare now. An hour later, 30 planes came to the sky above the Kai family, and the sound of huge propellers spread throughout the sky. Ling Feng was originally going to attack the Kai family directly, carry out a full coverage bombing, but when he saw the scene of the Kai family below, he was also a little surprised. At this moment, the shelter of the Kai family was full of white flags. These armed personnel of the Kai family were unarmed and stood in neat rows outside. In addition, next to this group of people were various weapons piled up like a small mountain. Kai Haonan was standing at the front of the team at this time. I am Kai Haonan, the head of the Kai family. I am here with all our Kai family members waiting for the incorporation of the God of War base. He knelt down directly in front of the fleet of the God of War base, prostrating himself. Wang Long looked at this scene and said speechlessly, Why is this guy so cowardly? He surrendered before the fight. Ling Feng touched his chin and said slowly, I will go down and take a look myself. Don't act rashly. This guy might do something. After that, he teleported directly to the ground. Kai Haonan was startled by the man who suddenly appeared. This person was wearing a black windbreaker, had neat short hair, and looked handsome. Although he looked young, he exuded a kingly aura. Kai Haonan concluded that this person should be the leader of the god of war base and his mortal enemy Ling Feng. Ling Feng slowly walked in front of him, without saying a word, just looking at him quietly. Kai Haonan knelt on the ground and felt that he was being stared at by a hungry beast, ready to give him a fatal blow at any time. He moved his body unconsciously and said in a trembling voice, I am Kai Haonan, meeting the leader Ling. Ling Feng smiled faintly. How do you know I am Ling Feng? Kai Haonan used his expertise and flattery to compliment Ling Feng. Leader Ling has an extraordinary temperament, and he carries a kingly aura that makes people bow down to him when they see him. I think there is no one else in the whole Handong province who can have such temperament except you. Ling Feng looked normal. He never liked such flatterers. I heard that you joined the Longping base, so I really want to congratulate Master Kai. Kai Haonan's expression froze, and cold sweat broke out on his face. Chapter 197. After saying these words to Ling Feng, he felt that the oppression he was under was about to reach the limit, and his breathing was a little difficult. He hurriedly explained, Leader Ling misunderstood me. I was also forced to do this. Long Kaiyu from Longping base came to my Kai family by force and threatened directly that if I didn't join their base, he would lead troops to slaughter our entire Kai family. Alas! Although I, Kai Haonan, am only a small family head, I was born in Handong province. How could I let a base in another province manage me? I am also a man of integrity. As Kai Haonan spoke, tears flowed unconsciously. Ling Feng watched his performance quietly. He didn't believe what Kai Haonan said at all. He had already learned from Lu Neng that Kai Haonan was a fence-sitter. He took the initiative to join the Japanese Dragon Slayer Society and help the Japanese do many unscrupulous things in Jinling. Ling Feng almost laughed when he heard that he had guts. However, in order to cooperate with his acting, Ling Feng did not expose him, but continued to ask, Where is Long Kaiyu now? Kai Haonan's eyes moved slightly, and he said indignantly, Long Kaiyu was knocked unconscious by me using drugs, and now I have captured him. If the leader wants to see it, I can take you there. Ling Feng's mouth curled up slightly, pretending to be happy. Okay, I just want to see who this Long Kaiyu is. Kai Haonan immediately stood up, stretched his stiff legs, and bowed respectfully. Leader, please follow me. He made a gesture of invitation. Ling Feng walked into the shelter hesitantly, and Kai Haonan followed behind him, with a gleam of light in his eyes and a barely perceptible smile at the corner of his mouth. Ling Feng came to the core area of Kai's family. Through observation, Ling Feng found that the shelter of Kai's family was much larger than his Ares base, and the structure inside was very solid, and the decoration was very luxurious. Compared with his base, it was just a rough house. Ling Feng nodded with satisfaction at the various decorations along the way of the shelter. Kai Haonan didn't know why Ling Feng nodded frequently at his shelter. He didn't want to know. His only goal now was to take Ling Feng to the dungeon of Kai's family and catch him there. Ling Feng followed Kai Haonan to the innermost part of the shelter, which was also the most remote place in the entire shelter, the dungeon. In the innermost part of the dungeon, Ling Feng saw a young man with scars all over his body and chained. This man was about 30 years old, with dark skin, strong body, and exuding a military temperament. Leader, he is Long Kaiyu from Longping base. When Long Kaiyu saw Kai Haonan, his originally calm expression immediately became extremely crazy. He kept pulling the chains on his body with his hands, and the heavy chains were immediately dragged and made a rustling sound. He kept cursing, Kai Haonan, you villain. How dare you use such a despicable method to deal with me? My Longping base will not let you go. Just wait. Our Longping base will definitely send a large army to flatten the entire Jinling. Kai Haonan looked at Long Kaiyu coldly and said righteously, "Although I, Kai Haonan, am afraid of death, I will never allow your base in Jiangnan province to control our Jinling territory. Even if I die, I will not compromise." Ling Feng stood aside without saying a word, watching their performance quietly. "I think it's a pity that they don't go to act. There is no trace of any performance at all. They are worthy of being old actors. He wants to give them a trophy for the best actor." Kai Haonan looked at Ling Feng, standing aside. He was arguing with Long Kaiyu until his throat was about to smoke, but Ling Feng refused to respond. It was not a good idea to continue acting like this. Ling Feng had to take the initiative to approach Long Kaiyu. Kai Haonan took the initiative to open the prison door and walked in. Ling Feng followed closely and stood behind Kai Haonan. A trace of irritation flashed in Kai Haonan's eyes. He walked aside inadvertently and said respectfully to Ling Feng, "Leader Ling Feng, why don't you ask a few questions?" Ling Feng waved his hand. "No, you can do it yourself." Kai Haonan's expression froze immediately. He didn't know how to start. Fortunately, Long Kaiyu spoke at this time. "You are Ling Feng, the leader of the God of War base. You killed Fan Shuiliang of our base." Ling Feng nodded slightly. "Yes, is there any problem?" Long Kaiyu said loudly with some excitement. "Why? Why did you kill him?" Ling Feng stood there and said calmly, "If you want to know, go ask Senate clear to him." "You." Long Kaiyu was stunned by Ling Feng's words and didn't know how to continue for a while. He just wanted Ling Feng to be close to him, using his ability to double his attack speed to suddenly attack Ling Feng and kill the thief. But this guy seemed to be doing it on purpose and just didn't come over. Long Kaiyu's expression moved, and he said a little disappointed, "Will you kill me?" Ling Feng smiled slightly and said uncertainly, "I think so. If you can provide some useful information, maybe I will consider letting you live." Long Kaiyu lowered his head and thought, with a complicated expression, "I have an important clue that can determine the life and death of Longping Base. I wonder if it can be exchanged for my life." "Oh!" Ling Feng looked at him with some surprise and asked, "What clue? Tell me." "This clue is very important. I don't want a third person to know," Long Kaiyu said cautiously. Ling Feng walked to his side naturally, very close to him, and then looked at him with a smile and said, "You can tell me now." Long Kaiyu slowly approached him and whispered, "My secret is you go to hell." He suddenly broke free of his hands, clenched his right fist, gathered all his strength into his fist, and activated his supernatural power at the same time. His fist hit Ling Feng's temple at a speed that was invisible to the naked eye. Long Kaiyu was confident that at such a close distance, with the strength of his king-level supernatural power and double the attack speed, no one could dodge his attack. In addition, the temple he attacked was the most vulnerable acupuncture point in the human body. Once hit hard, it would be certain to die. This was his only chance. Long Kaiyu exerted his full strength and successfully hit Ling Feng's temple with his fist. A ferocious smile appeared on Long Kaiyu's face, and Ling Feng also looked at him with a smile. "I gave you a chance. Don't say I didn't give you a chance." Long Kaiyu's face suddenly changed drastically, and then he found that he seemed unable to move. Chapter 198. "What did you do to me?" Long Kaiyu said with a look of horror. After he became a superpower, especially a king-level superpower, he felt weak for the first time. Ling Feng was like a god, who could control his life and death at will. Now, except for being able to speak and breathe, no skin on his body was under his control. Ling Feng smiled coldly, with a trace of disdain in his eyes. "I cooperated with you in acting and let you complete all the scenes. It was really nice. Now you don't have any regrets, right?" Ling Feng snapped his fingers after saying that. Bang! With a loud bang, Long Kaiyu instantly exploded into a ball of blood mist. Kai Haonan knelt on the ground with a thump. He was shaking all over. Long Kaiyu's death destroyed his last fantasy. Ling Chief, I really don't know these things about him." Ling Feng smiled evilly and slapped Kai Haonan in the air. Kai Haonan was slapped and flew out, and the whole person hit the wall of the cell directly, and the solid wall collapsed instantly. Kai Haonan's face was covered with blood, and he spit out a large mouthful of blood mixed with his teeth, and half of his face was swollen like a pig's head. I hate being deceived the most, but you are deceiving me as a fool. Ling Feng stepped on Kai Haonan's chest and said indifferently. Kai Haonan spit out blood and felt that several bones in his chest were broken. He spoke unclearly. Yao, spare my life. I will never do it again. I am willing to contribute all my supplies, just to survive. Ling Feng looked at him speechlessly and said, You are so stupid. If I kill you, these things will still be mine. Kai Haonan's expression froze, and a trace of fear flashed across his eyes. He did not doubt the truth of Ling Feng's words. After all, even the people in Longping Base said they would kill him, not to mention him, a small head of the Kai family, he said quickly. We have a lot of material reserves in the Kai family, all of which are hidden in secret. No one knows except me. Ling Feng bent down and stared at Kai Haonan, his eyes full of murderous intent. There was a threat in his tone. You'd better tell the truth, otherwise you should know the consequences. I guarantee that you will die miserably. Kai Haonan trembled and said cautiously, What I said is true. I dare not tell a lie. Ling Feng took his foot off his body and signaled him to lead the way. Kai Haonan endured the severe pain in his body, stood up from the ground, and walked out with his chest covered. Report to the Lord. Our Kai family has a total of 4 hidden material depots, none of which are in the Kai family shelter. Now I will take you to find the fuel depot first. Yes. Ling Feng nodded slightly and followed him. Kai Haonan walked out of the shelter, and Ling Feng signaled all the people in the God of War Brigade to come over. He asked Wang Long to arrange people to take over the entire shelter as soon as possible and count the materials. Then he followed Kai Haonan to the fuel depot. The fuel depot is not far from the Kai family shelter, about 2 kilometers away. It is built in a mountain. The entrance is camouflaged, and it is really difficult for ordinary people to find it. In order to ensure the safety here, Kai Haonan ambushed a lot of superpowers here. However, these people did not dare to act rashly after seeing Ling Feng. After Kai Haonan announced that he had surrendered, they also stayed where they were, waiting to be incorporated into the God of War base. Kai Haonan took Ling Feng into the interior. The entire empty space inside was very large, and it was full of oil tanks, each of which was filled with fuel. Chief Ling Feng, there are a total of 1,500 oil tanks here, and each tank is filled with fuel. This is the reserve fuel depot of our Kai family, so it is useless. Kai Haonan said cautiously. Ling Feng looked at the 1,500 oil tanks. Even though he had a lot of fuel materials in his space, he was shocked by the scene in front of him. He had searched for so many fuel materials before, and even after copying, the reserves here were not as rich as they are here. With the fuel materials here, plus the copying ability of his space, his entire base will not have to worry about the problem of materials for at least 50 years. The stock of the head of the Kai family is rich enough. Thank you. Ling Feng was happy. Kai Haonan smiled awkwardly, but his heart was bleeding. The materials he spent a huge amount of money to store were all cheap to others today. Ling Feng walked to the tanks one by one and put them into his space without any scruples. Kai Haonan watched the supplies being quickly collected by Ling Feng, and he felt so upset that he wanted to die, but he had to hold it in for the sake of his life. After quickly collecting the supplies, Ling Feng was in a good mood. He quickly walked to Kai Haonan, patted his shoulder, and even spoke in a gentler tone. Master Kai, let's go to the next place. Kai Haonan took a deep look at the empty warehouse and said quickly, Okay, please follow me, leader. The second warehouse of the Kai family is very close to this warehouse, only a few hundred meters away. It is a food reserve. Ling Feng nodded and followed him to the next place. After entering the warehouse, Ling Feng was shocked again. This is not a warehouse. Isn't it a shopping mall? The shelves are full of various supplies, all of which are classified and placed. The food area, the wine area, and various meats, seafood, and fruits are all placed very neatly. Due to the very cold weather, the frozen food here does not need special treatment at all and is placed directly on the shelves. Ling Feng estimated that these foods alone are worth at least 1 billion. In addition to these, there is also a super large space full of rice. Staple foods such as flour are estimated to be about 1 million tons. Faced with such abundant supplies, Ling Feng did not hesitate and directly put them into the space together with the shelves. Kai Haonan did not dare to look at it directly, fearing that he could not bear it and could not go up in one breath. After collecting these two warehouses, Ling Feng's interest became higher and higher. He was now looking forward to what surprises the next warehouse would bring him. The two continued to walk towards the next warehouse without stopping. The third warehouse was also full of harvests, and there were also various kinds of food in it, but the reserves of wine and cigarettes here were obviously much more than the previous warehouse. Various high-end brands of wine and cigars and cigarettes. According to Kai Haonan, he liked to collect famous wines before. Many of them were collections of their Kai family, which were very valuable. Ling Feng was very moved and said with some embarrassment, "Master Kai, these are your treasures. I am not taking away someone's love." Kai Haonan waved his hand hurriedly. He said with a forced smile, "Chief, you're being polite when you say this. This is my tribute to you." Chapter 199. Ling Feng nodded with satisfaction. The head of the Kai family is still generous, so I will not refuse it. Ling Feng looked at the rows of supplies, and his mouth was full of joy. He collected the supplies with his hands swiftly, especially the rows of boxes of cigarettes, which made him extremely happy. After quickly collecting these supplies, Ling Feng liked Kai Haonan more and more. How could this person be an enemy? This person was clearly his money-giving boy. He was even happier when he thought of another Lu family, killing people and setting fires to get a golden belt. The ancients were not deceiving me. Let's go next one. Ling Feng's tone became more and more kind. Then he came to the fourth warehouse, where the stored supplies were more mixed. In addition to a large number of weapons and ammunition, there were also various cars, excavators, engineering vehicles, etc. Ling Feng felt that although these things were not as important as food, they were also very useful to him. The future development of the base would inevitably require the use of these machines. After all four warehouses were collected, Kai Haonan sat on the ground weakly, not knowing what he was thinking. "Old Kai, are there any other warehouses?" Ling Feng looked at Kai Haonan kindly. Kai Haonan shook his head bitterly. "Chief, there are really no more. All are here." All the foundation of their Kai family was lost today. Even if he could save his life, their Kai family would never return to its peak state. Ling Feng looked at his eyes and didn't seem to be lying. He knew that this guy couldn't squeeze a drop of oil and water anymore, so he had to give up. He took Kai Haonan back to the base camp. Today's harvest can be said to be very rich. The supplies in Ling Feng's space have increased by 1/3 again, which is terrifying. Of course, it is the result of replication. He now dare not imagine how terrifying the inventory of a shelter of the level of Longping base would be. After returning to the base camp, Wang Long was busy receiving supplies. Seeing Ling Feng coming, Wang Long quickly crawled over and said excitedly, "Fengzi, we've made a fortune. The Kai family is really rich. There are so many supplies here. Ha ha." He then pulled Ling Feng towards the storage warehouse of the shelter. The Kai family shelter is very large, but the storage warehouse alone occupies nearly 1/3 of the area. The warehouse is full of food. It can be said that the supplies here alone are enough for the Kai family to eat for 20 years. Ling Feng put all the supplies in the warehouse into the space. The supplies are safest only when they are placed in his own space. Ling Feng is now eager to go to the territory of the Lu family in Qingzhou, where the supplies must be more abundant. The Lu family is an old family in Qingzhou. Before the end of the world, more than half of the industries in the entire Qingzhou were controlled by the Lu family. The family foundation is deeper, and the amount of material reserves must exceed that of the Kai family. Arrange for the brothers to take a brief rest, leave 100 people to continue to count the supplies, let Lao Ma stay, and the rest of the people follow me to Lu's house. Wang Long received the order and immediately went down to make arrangements. An hour later, the helicopter took off again and flew towards Qingzhou. Qingzhou is adjacent to Jinling. The Liu family shelter is less than 200 kilometers away from the Kai family. If the helicopter is driving normally, it can arrive in 20 minutes. Kai Haonan and Ling Feng took the same plane. Ling Feng hoped that Kai Haonan would act as a lobbyist and persuade the Liu family to surrender voluntarily. Kai Haonan, who was eager to make a contribution, readily agreed. He wished that the Liu family would take out all their supplies like himself. Everyone is an ally. Why should he be left with nothing? The plane soon arrived above the Liu family. Strangely, the Liu family did not stop the armed personnel and the superpowers from resisting. The door of the Liu family shelter was open, and no one was on duty. Ling Feng immediately ordered the plane to start docking. 30 planes stopped one after another in the open space in front of the shelter. 400 King-level team members quickly got off the plane, lined up neatly, and waited for Ling Feng's instructions. Ling Feng looked at the wide-open door of the shelter. His eyes flickered slightly, and he sensed a hint of unusual meaning. He smelled a hint of blood in the air. Ling Feng said to the soldiers, "Be careful when you go in. If there is resistance, kill them all." Ling Feng said, and took the lead to walk into the shelter. After entering the shelter, Ling Feng did not see a single person. It was all empty, but bloodstains could be seen on the walls from time to time. Judging from the color, it should have been there a few hours ago. Ling Feng frowned slightly and secretly guessed in his heart, did the Liu family get wiped out? Walked out of the shelter, Ling Feng walked towards the inner area through a 3-meter-high door outside the shelter. As soon as he entered, he saw something that surprised him. A woman covered in blood walked towards him with mechanical steps. The woman's stomach seemed to have been eaten by something, and her intestines and internal organs drooped outside. The intestines were dragged directly to the ground, leaving a blood mark. The woman had a ferocious expression, and she kept roaring in her mouth. She opened her mouth wide, and green mucus dripped from her mouth. The woman kept looking around. When she saw Ling Feng in the distance, she roared excitedly like a beast that had found its prey, and ran towards Ling Feng quickly. The internal organs outside the body also swung left and right because of the violent movement of the body. "Damn zombies!" Wang Long, who had just walked in, couldn't help but exclaimed. Ling Feng pointed his finger at the zombie slightly, and a ball of green flames instantly appeared on the zombie's body. The zombie was instantly burned to ashes by the powerful, strange fire. How can there be zombies? I thought they only existed in movies, but I didn't expect to see them in real life today. It's just too disgusting, Wang Long said with a frown. There are probably quite a few zombies here. Let the brothers be careful. If you encounter zombies, just use the strange fire to deal with them. Don't let any zombies stay, Ling Feng reminded. After Ling Feng finished speaking, he continued to walk forward. Sure enough, a large number of zombies began to appear. These zombies had very low combat power and very low mobility. The members of the God of War Brigade began to quickly clean up these zombies. For a while, the entire shelter was green and dead, and the air was filled with the smell of burning. Ling Feng led the team members to quickly advance inside. All these primary zombies were cleaned up by Ling Feng. Ling Feng guessed that there should be stronger zombies here, otherwise this huge base would not be destroyed by such weak zombies. Soon they arrived at the core area of the shelter. In a small square, hundreds of zombies were wandering around, but they obviously looked different from other zombies. Chapter 200. The movement speed of the hundreds of zombies here is obviously much more flexible than those outside. The zombies here are very tall, reaching a height of 2 meters. Their faces have turned green, and the teeth on both sides stick out of their mouths for 7 or 8 centimeters, which looks a bit like vampire teeth. The bodies of the zombies are all complete, unlike the incomplete zombies outside, and the nails of each zombie are very long and deformed, a bit like bird claws, which look very sharp. The sound of Ling Feng's walking startled the wandering zombies. The zombies all looked at the door. When they found the faces of the living people, they immediately ran towards Ling Feng and his team. They were still roaring. Some zombies jumped directly and flew towards Ling Feng. Ling Feng raised his eyebrows and said to the team members behind him, "Quickly destroy them." The team members behind him quickly spread out and killed the zombies on the opposite side, and the two sides fought together in an instant. The team members used strange fire to face this group of zombies that looked very scary. They easily killed the zombies with just one encounter and cremated them by the way. In the whole space, ashes flew everywhere for a while. Ling Feng frowned, fanned the dust in front of him with his hand, and continued to walk into the shelter. After destroying this group of zombies, Ling Feng did not find any other zombies, nor did he find a living person. Lu Guanyu, the head of the Lu family, was also missing. "Bring Lu Neng to me." Ling Feng immediately arranged for the soldiers to bring Lu Neng here. As early as when he was at the base headquarters, Ling Feng asked the soldiers to bring Lu Neng with them to prevent the current situation. As the former head of the Lu family, he must be very clear about everything about their Lu family, including the place where their supplies were hidden. Soon, Lu Neng was brought to Ling Feng. After several days of imprisonment, Lu Neng's temperament had completely changed. You can no longer see the temperament of the head of the family. Instead, he was cautious everywhere. In order to survive, his eyes had long lost their spirit. When Lu Neng saw Ling Feng, he quickly knelt on the ground, not daring to look up at Ling Feng. "Hello, leader," Ling Feng said lightly with his hands behind his back. "Master Lu, are you familiar with this place?" Lu Neng dared to raise his head and looked around. A trace of confusion flashed in his eyes. "I didn't expect to return to my home again in this identity. Things have really changed." He also saw a familiar figure here, Kai Haonan. At this time, Kai Haonan also looked at him bitterly. His eyes flickered, full of complicated emotions. The heads of the two families, who were originally high-spirited and powerful, met in this way. "How much do you know about your Lu family's research on zombies?" Ling Feng said in a serious tone. Lu Neng didn't dare to lie and said immediately, "Report to the leader. My Lu family's research project on genetic warriors is mainly followed by my son. I have always let him be responsible for contacting and communicating with MK independently. I don't know the specific experimental process." After saying that, he looked at Ling Feng cautiously. Ling Feng narrowed his eyes slightly, looking a little unhappy. "It's this MK again. Why are there shadows everywhere? Take us to find supplies. If you tell the truth, you can get freedom like the head of the Kai family." After saying that, Ling Feng looked at Lu Neng. "The head of the Kai family selflessly contributed all his wealth. I think the head of the Lu family should also do the same." Lu Neng immediately expressed his loyalty. "I am willing to hand over all the supplies." Then, Lu Neng took Ling Feng to the warehouse area of the Lu family. When he arrived at the door of the Lu family's warehouse, Lu Neng said with a hint of caution, "Chief, this is our Lu family's warehouse, but I have given the key to my son." Ling Feng waved at the door of the warehouse without saying a word. The door weighing 10 tons and 1 meter thick broke into pieces and collapsed. Ling Feng took the lead to enter the warehouse. The warehouse of the Lu family was larger than the warehouse of the Kai family. It was filled with various supplies, and all of them were food. There was no other supplies. The height of the warehouse reached 10 meters, and the supplies were piled from the ground to the roof. Ling Feng quickly collected all the supplies, which made Lu Neng's heart tremble and his face look a little ugly. This expression was seen by Kai Haonan, and he couldn't help but find a little comfort in his heart. "If we're going to die, we will die together. This is the right way." Ling Feng walked in front of Lu Neng and said with a smile, "Master Lu, the Lu family is so powerful. It's impossible that they only have this warehouse, right?" Before Lu Neng spoke, Kai Haonan took the lead and said as if to take credit, "Chief, the supplies here are only a small part of the Lu family. When they raided the storm base before, most of the supplies were basically taken away by the Lu family. In addition, the Lu family was a catering giant in Qingzhou before, so there must be a lot of food." Ling Feng looked at Kai Haonan with appreciation. This spirit of not letting my friend die, but my poor Taoist die, was indeed insidious enough. Lu Neng looked at Kai Haonan fiercely, and a trace of resentment flashed in his eyes, but he didn't dare to show it in front of Ling Feng, so he could only say it with pain. All the other supplies of my Lu family are hidden in a secret base. All the supplies and those seized from the storm base are all there. I can take the chief to check it out. Lu Neng lowered his head deeply to hide his reluctance in his heart. Compared with Ling Feng, he hated Kai Haonan very much now. This guy was at least his ally before, but he sold him out. All the materials that he had worked so hard to save up were now going to be vomited out. The family's old foundation was gone. The Lu family had no hope of making a comeback in the future. Lu Neng staggered in front like a deflated ball and led Ling Feng towards the secret base. The Lu family's secret base was far away from the Lu family shelter. Ling Feng took Lu Neng directly to a snowmobile. The interior of this snowmobile was very luxurious. It was Lu Neng's exclusive car before. Later, it was upgraded by Ling Feng and now became Ling Feng's exclusive car. Lu Neng looked at the somewhat familiar snowmobile and sighed in his heart. When he thought of his current situation, he felt even more uncomfortable. The only thing that comforted him was that his son was not arrested. With his son's intelligence, he should have escaped from Qingzhou by now. He didn't want his son to avenge him. He just hoped that he could live the rest of his life in peace and not be like himself, with nothing in the end